live streaming now on YouTube. All right. And it is 9:02. Madam Chair, if you want to go ahead and get started.
Okay, I think we should. Good with that. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order, please. I don't have a gavel, but thank you so much for listening to that. Let me begin by welcoming everybody to this public meeting of the Board of Governors of Pennsylvania's State System of Higher Education. For those in the public and the media watching via YouTube, we want to welcome you as well. And for those of you who are participating via Zoom, again, please turn on your webcam option so that we can all see each other. A few other reminders. Remember to leave your lines on mute until you want to speak, and that will help minimize background noise. If you're on the phone, you'll need to push *6 for the first time that you want to speak to unmute your line. Sharessa, will you please do a roll call of the board members?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Great. Representative Tim Briggs.
Here.
Governor Audrey Bronson. Governor Nicole Dunlop.
Here.
Governor Alexander Feefold.
Here.
Governor Donald Hauser.
Here.
Senator Scott Martin. Designee Terry Trego. Vice Chair David Mays. Representative Brad Roy.
Here.
Senator Judith Swank.
Here.
Chair Cynthia Shapiro, yes.
Yes.
Vice Chair Sam Smith.
Here.
Secretary Meg Sneed. Designee Allison Jones.
Here.
Governor Stephen Washington.
Here.
Governor Neil Weaver.
Here.
Governor Janet Yeomans.
Here.
And Jamie Phillips, faculty liaison.
Here.
Good morning. We have a quorum present. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. The first thing I want to do is to welcome Stephen Washington, who leads student government at Shippensburg University. He is the newest member of our board, and he was appointed to fill the student seat after Avon graduated. Stephen, we're so delighted to have you here today. Thank you so much, and we would love to give you an opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, thank you everyone for having me. This is a wonderful opportunity. I look forward to working with you all in order to serve our students to the best of our abilities, again, the most important people here. So thank you, Madam Chair.
We appreciate that. And again, welcome to the Board of Governors. So I just want to start off today again, noting, as I did, I think the last time that we assembled, that we are still in the midst of this pandemic. And I just need to comment, as I have before, and I will continue to, on the outstanding work that our universities are doing to prepare for the fall semester in the middle of this pandemic that's going on. I can't thank enough the faculty, the staff, the administrators for all of your efforts. It's been nothing short of heroic. I think we would all agree to that. And I know that we've talked about different plans and conditions under which the campuses are proceeding with fall operations. I'm going to just ask people again to mute your phones, if you don't mind. Thank you very much. But again, as I was saying, there are a variety of different types of planned operations going forward. Some are for remote, some are a hybrid, but for everyone, for every university and for every single one of our students, this is all about as much as we can do to help you, our students, be ready to succeed in your goals. That is what we're all about, and that's what is happening as we prepare for campus operations, down to every single person on campus and in the chancellor's office. So once again, thank you for all of that. And I want to thank our students for your patience as the universities continue to make adjustments. Sometimes these adjustments are, happening daily, but we are thinking ahead as much as we can, trying to prepare for all sorts of different environments that could possibly happen. And again, with your best interests in mind, and we appreciate that you understand this and that you're working with us as we all move toward this goal of operating in the fall. I also now want to speak on just to follow up on a topic, an incredibly important topic that we talked about the last time we were together as a board. And this is following up, actually it was our board meeting, not our quarterly one in April, but the one that I believe we had in June, in which the chancellor and I both talked about the importance of the state system bringing the agenda of equity, diversity, and inclusion to the forefront at our system. As I said at the time, this is really embedded in our mission and embedded in our redesign, but I wasn't sure that we had named it as distinctly and clearly as we could have. And we did then, and we're continuing to. And I'm just really proud of the fact that it's more than words. The universities themselves have a number of great initiatives happening. And now at the system level, we are following up on our words by an appointment that the chancellor made last week of a senior leader at the system level who I don't like to say has responsibility for this, because this cannot be the responsibility of any one person, but will certainly be the person to lead this effort in a very tangible way. She starts next month, but I believe that she is on our Zoom meeting today. And so I would like to introduce her. This is the first appointment that the system has made for a vice chancellor and Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. And I'm so delighted that Dr. Denise Pearson has accepted this role. And I'm going to ask you to say a few words in just a moment, Dr. Pearson, but I just want to highlight your long and impressive career in teaching, research, and service, as well as higher education administration. And you are finishing a very important position as Vice President of Academic Affairs and Equity Initiatives at the State Higher Education Executive Officers Association in Washington, D.C. So we are so delighted and feel so fortunate to be able to welcome you. And I'd like to offer you now a moment to say a few words if you would like to. And you may be on mute.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Governors, and Chancellor Greenstein for giving me this moment to introduce myself to the PASHE community. I am honored to have been selected to lead efforts to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion for the system. So thank you again, Chancellor Greenstein, for the opportunity to join your team. I can think of several reasons why this role is so important, maybe now more than ever, and as part of the system redesign. I especially think about the national degree attainment goal of 60% of adults between the ages of 24 and 64 having a post-secondary credential by the year 2060. In one study that disaggregated the data by race and ethnicity, it is projected that the goal will be met by identified groups, except for African Americans and Hispanics. This is not good, and it has meaning for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and its goal of 60% attainment by the year 2025. So when I think about how we can leverage our collective strengths and elevate diversity, equity, and inclusion as a system, I don't think it will be easy. And I also realize that each campus is unique and one size will not necessarily fit all. Nonetheless, I am eager to learn about all the great work already happening across the system. And I look forward to partnering with you to develop a more comprehensive and coordinated strategy that ensures the success of all PASHE students. So for me, the moral, economic, and social imperatives are clear and compelling. And despite the challenges we face, I believe PASHE is well positioned to become a model system for the country. Finally, I just want to extend a special thanks to those of you who have already reached out to me with welcoming messages. Your kindness is greatly appreciated, and I look forward to arriving in Pennsylvania soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pearson. And we so much look forward to you getting to Pennsylvania as well. Before I go back to just a couple of more remarks, I'm wondering, Chancellor Greenstein, if you want to just say a few words on this particular topic and about Dr. Pearson. But you're on mute. There you go.
You'd think after all this time, I would have figured out how to use Zoom. That's not good. Vice Chancellor Pearson, it is a pleasure to welcome you. I feel like we've been having this conversation for a very long time. Personally, I think to a certain extent, this appointment is late in coming, but I'm glad we're here. It reflects a huge amount of energy on the part of our university leadership in particular. I know it reflects a huge amount of energy on the part of our students, faculty and staff. It is time. I do want to make a couple of points. First of all, while Vice Chancellor Pearson starts next month, by my calculation, that's actually 17 days from now. So I look forward to seeing you in Harrisburg next week, I believe. I want to just pick up on the point about now more than ever, the importance of this role and this agenda. The pandemic that we're experiencing will potentially have profoundly inequitable impacts. As so many other experiences that we're seeing, the pandemic has put our society into an MRI and shown the structural inequalities in stark relief. We can no longer, in my view, ignore them. And I just want to reflect on a few inequities that concern me as universities across the country consider the balance of remote and face-to-face instruction. They do that knowing that students who have historically been underserved by our universities and colleges, low-income students, students of color, rural students, are disadvantaged in a remote environment, not marginally, significantly, that their progress, more than their white and wealthier peers, is profoundly disturbed through remote learning. We know as universities begin to move to think about how to balance hybrid and online forms of instruction, that the cost that is paid by those universities in terms of staff is borne most heavily by our colleagues who are in lower paid roles that are unable to telework. We know that universities that have large endowments are able to make a different set of choices about how they will respond to this pandemic than those that do not have large endowments. And funnily enough, universities and colleges that do not have large endowments, with great disproportion, serve the students who have historically not been served well by our industry. There is a literature which suggests that universities and colleges across this nation articulate and amplify existing inequalities. There is the potential that coming out of this pandemic, that trend will become exacerbated. So now's the time. I know we'll be judged by our actions and not by our words. I look forward to working with Vice Chancellor Pearson over the next several months and bringing some preliminary thinking about what our strategies ought to be in this vast area and how we ought to prioritize them as early as October. But you know, Chairwoman and members of the board, that this effort has my fullest commitment and the commitment of my staff in the Office of the Chancellor and the presidents in the executive leadership group. So thank you very much. And thanks very much, Denise, for joining us. I look forward to seeing you here in Harrisburg.
Thank you, Dan. And I would just say to everyone that you know that this effort has my full 100% support and the support of the Board of Governors as well. So we're all speaking with one voice on this. I now want to just talk for a couple minutes, a minute or so, about our Pesci Foundation. And I'm mixed emotions, as always, to announce that we have a transition happening at the head of our state system foundation. Our longtime president, Jennifer Hartman, who has served so beautifully. I've enjoyed working with you so much, Jenny, has made the decision to leave to explore the next chapter of your professional career. You've been such a terrific partner, and we've really, you know, some of the things that we've done together, I've really enjoyed and have benefited the system. Really looking toward engaging the Pesci Foundation in everything that we do, and in bringing new initiatives, you know, to the system for our students. You've been such a leader and such a great partner in doing that. You have met or exceeded your own goals every year, and really have, as I said, moved the ball forward in the foundation's development and growth. So I just want to thank you so much, and have enjoyed working with you so closely, and with the Pesci Foundation board as well. And so appreciate everything that you've done to work with your own Pesci Foundation board to prepare them for its own future success and for finding your own successor. And I'm delighted to say that the search was extremely successful, and we look forward to welcoming Cynthia Pritchard, another Cynthia finally, to the state system family, and she will join us August 1st. Cynthia comes to us from Delaware, where she most recently served as CEO and president of Philanthropy Delaware Incorporated. I'm just, the other thing I would like to add before I ask Cynthia if she wants to say a few words, because I believe she is joining our Zoom session, is that I think the Pesci Foundation is really poised to make a huge leap. It is aligned with and completely in support of system redesign and our goals, and prepared to really step up and step forward in a strategy that will bring dollars in at the system level to support our redesign initiatives. And I'm so excited about that. Again, I thank Jenny, because Jenny, you were the one who set this up and got this going. And now Cynthia, you're coming in and you're going to take the ball and really run with it. And I just feel like, you know, everything is sort of coming together from a lot of different places. So Cynthia, if you are on, I can't see you on this page. Hopefully you are. You'll take yourself off Zoom, and I invite you to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. It is my honor and pleasure to speak to each and every one of you. Chairman Shapiro and Chancellor Greenstein, we're very excited about what the next phase is. I am very grateful to the foundation board, working with Jenny and creating a very aggressive, thoughtful, aligned plan that I hope to implement and work in tandem with the system to move forward the goals of the system and the goals of the foundation in order to support the work that has the future. I'm glad to be back in Pennsylvania. As I've said in my multiple things, I am a graduate of Mansfield University, so part of the system. So I'm glad to be back and serving something that served me so well not just me, but my family generationally. My grandparents also are part of the system. So I'm glad to be back and bring my years of experience in everything from workforce development, foundation relations, and corporate fundraising, to the system to hopefully get us where we need to get to. And it's a pleasure to meet all of you virtually. And I look forward to the opportunity, which I'm not sure when that will be, to meet each and every one of you in person. And Denise, I'm honored to be starting with someone with such credential. So I look forward to getting to know you better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Appreciate that. And yeah, August is going to be great. The last topic I just want to touch on before we get into public comment is just to talk about our legislative success toward furthering system redesign. This is our first meeting since the passage of Act 50, which is the most far-reaching and transformative update to our enabling legislation since the system was founded back in 1984 or 85. I may have gotten that wrong, but approximately then. There are so many people to thank for drafting, improving on this language, giving input, helping to get it supported and sponsored, and ultimately passing this legislation, which had I think, I don't know if it's unprecedented. For me, it felt like it was unprecedented bipartisan support. It was really amazing what happened at the end. And then, of course, signed by the governor, whom we thank as well. Like I said, there are just too many names to mention here. Everywhere from in our system office, our presidents, of course, the many legislators who worked on this on both sides of the aisle in both houses, our own as well, who sit on our state system board of governors. So I can only say, I'm not going to start mentioning names because I know I'll leave some out. And we thank everybody who had a hand in the passage and the signing of this legislation. And really what matters now is how this legislation will help us strengthen our institutions and ensure that we have open doors of opportunity for our students throughout the Commonwealth. That is the goal of the system redesign and the goal of this legislation, to help us achieve this system redesign. And really, I'm talking about this last because it's a segue into the main part of our business in today's meeting, which we will get to. But without it, we wouldn't be able to be having the discussion we're going to have today. So thank you again. Before we go to public comment, I do need to report that the board met in executive session yesterday from 1 p.m. until 3:50 p.m. And now public comment. Members of the general public that wish to speak were asked to dial into the number provided online and in the sunshine notice. So let me now turn to Randy to see if we do have anyone on the line for public comment.
We have two people on the line for public comment, one from Somerset, Pennsylvania. We'll just pause to see if they were intending to speak to the public.
I have nothing to ask at this point.
Okay, thank you. And then we have somebody calling in from a Connecticut line. Anyone who'd like to speak from the public? All right, they might just be listening. No problem, Madam Chair. There is nobody else on the public comment line.
Okay, thank you very much. I will now turn to our statewide union leaders for remarks. Let us start with Shalita Camarda-Webb, the president of SCUPA. Good morning.
Unmuting always helps. Good morning.
There you go.
Good morning, everyone. Chairperson Shapira, governors, Chancellor Greenstein, university presidents, colleagues, and all guests. I am Shalita Camarda-Webb, and I am privileged to be with you a final time as the president and representing the State College University Professional Association. Throughout my tenure, SCUPA and the state system leadership worked collectively with other PASHE stakeholders, discussing challenges and opportunities and carrying forth action plans to our mission of providing high quality education to our students at 14 Commonwealth universities. Governor Shapiro, I appreciate the opportunity and platform to share with you and your colleagues the commitment and dedication of the 780 plus SUA employees to educate our students by cultivating environments that empower and enable them to grow into and recognize their intersecting identities, and how these experiences merge with their academic and skill development are the very essence of holistic learning. Chancellor Greenstein, thank you for your leadership, modeling and creating an atmosphere, allowing for open and ongoing communication, transparency, and giving myself and my SUA colleagues a voice in shaping the future of our state system universities. In these extraordinary times, our university staff and faculty and administrators transformed our campuses into virtual learning communities, still beholden to academic excellence and committed to supporting, encouraging, and caring for our students. Assuredly, the pandemic has changed the way we address and interact with each other. Nonetheless, we continue with the task of educating our students. Please note that our colleagues in student affairs in the service and support areas did not miss a beat in this realm. We continue to present with our students, to be present with our students, holding Zoom sessions and team meetings, providing support and resources, keeping them connected to our universities and to each other. As we plan for the 2021 academic year and the future of the state system with our students in mind, I remind the state and campus leaders of my SUA colleagues' unwavering and dedication and commitment to their universities and students. When making hard decisions to sustain our campuses, again, I ask you to keep in mind that SUAs are subject matter experts in students and student success and have transferable skills to step in wherever needed, if given the opportunity. In these times when divisiveness and ill will rule the airways, SCUPA and the state system and campus leaders must continue to model positive collaboration and honest communication where we may disagree without being disagreeable. I look forward to seeing you and experiencing the continued partnership between PASHE and SCUPA under the leadership of the President-elect Todd Spalding. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shalita. But before you step away from the virtual podium, we are going to go a bit out of order on the agenda so that I can offer the following board resolution in honor of your service at the system level and to thank you for being such a positive force for our students and for the staff who work every day to support them. And so now we're all going to pretend that you're standing next to me at a podium and I'm holding this nice framed, resolution for you and reading it, and people are taking all sorts of pictures. Whereas Shalita Camarda-Webb has led the State College and University Professional Association since 2016, representing with distinction employees who work in professional positions and support our students throughout our 14 universities. And whereas she is concluding her service as president of SCUPA after 4 years and having successfully reached multiple collective bargaining agreements for its members, and whereas Ms. Camarda-Webb continues to contribute to a vibrant student experience at California University of Pennsylvania in her role as Associate Director of On-Campus Living and Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, therefore be it resolved that the Board of Governors of Pennsylvania's State System of Higher Education expresses its sincere gratitude for Shalita Camarda-Webb's record of leadership and for the many contributions to the state system and to the success of its students. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Governor Shapiro and governors. I really, really appreciate it. I feel privileged with honor. Thank you.
And we are so honored. Thank you. Now I will ask Dr. Jamie Martin to offer remarks on behalf of APSCUF.
Thank you, Chairman Shapiro. If you just give me one moment to find my remarks, I'd appreciate that. There we go. Chairwoman Shapiro, Chancellor Greenstein, governors, university presidents, and guests. Good morning. My name is Jamie Martin. I'm the president of the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, and we represent the faculty and coaches at our 14 great universities. March 16th, 2020 is a date that I clearly recall, as it was the last one that I spent in my campus office on the beautiful campus at IUP. On that date, there were 76 cases of COVID-19 in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The first death in the state occurred 2 days later on March 18th. Around that same time, Chancellor Greenstein made the decision to stop all face-to-face classes for at least 2 weeks to coincide with Governor Wolf's order to close K-12 schools for that same period. The Chancellor stated, and rightly so, that he made the decision in the interest of the health and safety of all Pennsylvanians. As we know, we did not return to face-to-face classes in the spring. Now, 4 months later, on July 16th, we have close to 100,000 cases of COVID-19 in Pennsylvania, and we're nearing 7,000 deaths from the virus. If in March we decided to keep our students safe at home to reduce the likelihood of them congregating on and off campus and risk contracting this deadly virus when there were 76 cases of COVID, why are most universities still planning on bringing students back to campus and delivering classes in a face-to-face format when there are nearly 100,000 cases here in the state? How is that in the interest and health and safety of all? We also now know what age group seems to be at the root of the increase in cases in Pennsylvania. On July 4th and again on July 9th, 2020, the Pennsylvania Department of Health issued 2 alerts regarding an increase in COVID-19 cases in the state and about the changing epidemiology of COVID-19 case demographics. Dr. Rachel Levine noted the increasing number of cases among younger people with transmission associated with travel and social gatherings or social settings, including bars, restaurants, and parties. Across the Commonwealth, cases are growing in the 19 to 24 age group. According to data collected by the State System of Higher Education, in fall 2019, over 90% of the students at our 14 universities are traditional age, in the 18 to 24 age range. In short, cases of COVID-19 in individuals of college age are rising, and we do not know when the top of that spike will come. The surge in cases is primarily the result of social gatherings, parties, and meeting up at bars. Still, those most at risk of more severe outcomes from COVID-19 are older adults, and the risk increases with age. This is one of the many reasons why faculty members have so many concerns about returning to face-to-face teaching in the fall. AppStuff recently distributed a survey to 4,800 of our members, and nearly 3,200 responded to it, which was a 66% response rate. We are interested in their views, concerns, and issues regarding the fall 2020 reopening plans. I was not surprised by the number of responses of my colleagues, but the results are sobering. Over 40% of the faculty who responded have an underlying medical condition, as outlined by the CDC, that puts them at increased risk for severe illness from COVID-19. Among those faculty, over half also live with or care for another individual who is at risk. Over 60% of our faculty are concerned about contracting COVID or potentially exposing their family to it. The faculty also have grave concerns about the COVID testing capability of their university and or local community healthcare systems, as well as concerns about adequate contact tracing. In the survey, we asked faculty if they felt they could teach safely face-to-face in the fall, and 71% said no. Another concern expressed by over 90% is the belief that students will not appropriately social distance outside of the classroom, in their residence halls, or off-campus housing, or when they congregate in social settings or at bars and restaurants. In short, we believe that our students will behave in the same way that other 19 to 24-year-olds are doing in our communities, where they're driving a spike in COVID-19 cases. Please understand, I'm not being critical of our students. I recall my college days, and while the curricular element was important, so too are the extracurricular activities, and these often involve congregating in groups with my friends. To be sure, our members are anxious to be back in the classroom in the fall, but they're rightly fearful of teaching face-to-face classes. Only 12% of the survey respondents indicated a preference for in-person teaching this fall. So what are we asking for? We're asking that our faculty be permitted to feel safe, that their concerns about their health and the health of their loved ones be taken seriously. My colleagues want to teach. They just don't want to become sick. The chancellor's repeatedly expressed appreciation for the faculty, and we're asking that he demonstrate that appreciation by encouraging our universities to allow for flexible work options for our members who have underlying medical issues that put them at risk, or live with or care for someone who is at risk. We would also like to know in advance of the fall semester, how many cases will have to occur on any of our campuses before action is taken. How many sick students, sick staff, and faculty will it take to consider an alternative to face-to-face delivery? My colleagues have asked me to ask all of you this question. I do recognize that our university presidents and their leadership teams have worked hard to assemble reopening plans. I know that Chancellor Greenstein has provided guidance and a framework for those plans. And I do not envy the difficulty you've all faced in pondering the start of the fall semester. I know several of you very well, and I know that these decisions are causing angst. However, we've often heard about the need to make data-driven decisions, and yet moving forward with fall 2020 reopening plans that include a significant number of face-to-face classes seems to fly in the face of the data. Just yesterday, Dr. Robert Redfield, the director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, said this, and I'll quote, "I am worried. I do think the fall and winter of 2020 and 2021 are probably going to be one of the most difficult times that we've experienced in American public health because of the co-occurrence of COVID and influenza. We appreciate the decisions made by President Fiorentino and President Welsh and their respective leadership teams for looking at the data, examining the science, and listening to the predictions made by our public health officials about the upcoming fall and winter months. I can tell you both that after you announced your decisions to move to primarily remote learning, my friends and colleagues on your campuses breathed a sigh of relief. It was and is palpable. To the presidents at the other 12 universities, I will ask once again that you be cognizant of what you are asking your faculty to do, and to bear in mind their concerns about the safety of our students, their own safety, and the safety of their loved ones. Before I close, I wish to express my appreciation to all of you for your recognition of Dr. Kenneth Mash today. There is no one who is more deserving of sincere thanks and gratitude. Dr. Mash fought tirelessly for our members, and I know that if he were still our president, that he would be arguing for the same things that I have been. Dr. Mash will be returning to teach classes this fall at East Stroudsburg University, and I must tell you, I'm relieved that he will not be teaching face-to-face. If he were, I would have been truly concerned for my friend and his health. If you truly wish to honor his dedication, his lengthy service to APSCUF, to the state system, and to our students, please do so by not putting our colleagues in harm's way. Thank you for your time today, and I continue to wish all of you and all of your loved ones good health.
Thank you, Jamie. Very much appreciated. I would now like to take this opportunity to recognize your predecessor, Dr. Ken Mash, who has joined us today so that we can honor his service to the state system, its students, and the faculty who serve them. Ken, I'm delighted to make this resolution for you. Again, please picture yourself at the podium next to me, holding it up, and cameras flashing, and this just going out on every social media possible, because I am truly delighted to honor you. Let me read our resolution in your honor. Whereas Dr. Kenneth Mash has served as president of the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties for 6 years, earning the respect and appreciation of APSCUF members, his colleagues, the chancellor, and members of the Board of Governors. And whereas Dr. Mash previously served as APSCUF vice president for 4.5 years, making a total of more than a decade of service in APSCUF's senior leadership, during which he faithfully represented the faculty as a distinguished voice of thousands. And whereas Dr. Mash has served more than 2 decades as professor of political science at East Stroudsburg University, endearing himself to students and colleagues alike, building friendships and connections that will last a lifetime. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Governors congratulates Dr. Mash on a successful decade of leadership with APSCUF and thanks him for providing perspectives that profoundly shaped the collaborative relationship between the state system and our hardworking, talented faculty. Ken, I invite you to say a few words.
Well, thank you very much, Cindy. I really, truly appreciate it. I really can't express enough how important it was that you came in and after a rough period of time did start to begin to change the entire attitude and relationship between the faculty and the state system of higher education. And Dan, once you came in, really brought that along a great deal. It's been my honor to work with you and with Jeff and the Council of Trustees and my colleagues in the other unions. And of course, my greatest appreciation goes to my colleagues, to APSCUF as an organization, to Dr. Martin, who continues to forcefully make pertinent points. And much like what Shalita said, I think we all do better when we have, countervailing forces at work that can lead us to the right decisions. And at the same time, though, to try and look at what we have in common and what our overall mission is and working towards that. So again, thank you very much. And I am excited to get back to teaching. I wish it was face-to-face under different circumstances, but I do look forward to this new experience of teaching directly online. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Ken, so very much for many years of service and for our good relationship. Now it is my pleasure to introduce the new president of the Pact, Mr. Jack Wabi, to offer an update on behalf of our trustees. Jack, welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much. My best wishes to all from the Pennsylvania Association of Council of Trustees. I would like to express my appreciation to the past president of Pact, Jeff Smith, for his strong leadership and tireless efforts in bringing trustees' voice to the chancellors and the Board of Governors. I'm a graduate of Kutztown University, and I serve on the Council of Trustees since 1992. I have a long career in education, earning a bachelor's degree in education and visually handicapped from Kutztown and a master's degree from Bucknell. My nearly 30 years on the KU Council of Trustees and my years in the leadership of Pact have taught me much about higher education and the challenges we face. While the Board of Governors deal with system-wide decision interests, members of the Council of Trustees are devoted to their home institutions and our primary interest in the stability of our schools, all of which are well over 100 years old, and ensure their mission and important to the communities are secure for many years to come. I am committed to working with the Board of Governors and the Chancellor to address the many challenges before us that might put risk to the future of our institutions. We look forward to working with you to give our input and what the strongest indicators might be with regards to the university's success. The past 150 years or so have presented many challenges along the way for our institutions, and I'm sure that working together, we can deal with the challenges we are currently facing. We are grateful for the strong leadership shown by the Chancellor, the Board of Governors, presidents, and many others during the COVID-19 pandemic. The trustees of the 14 campuses know of the difficult decisions that the leadership of the system and our campuses must make and we stand behind you to offer advice and support in these difficult times. Trustees come from many walks of life and different backgrounds, but the primary things we have in common is the devotion we have to the institutions we represent. Many of us come from very humble backgrounds and are committed to the mission of PASHE system to provide opportunities to those students who may have the greatest needs. As the president of Pact and as the representative of the trustees of the 14 universities, I am committed to working with you all to address the difficult challenges. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Jack. I really look forward to working with you. Glad we've had some time to get to know each other before you're coming into this position. There's a lot of work to do. And, we reach out to you in partnership and in friendship. And while you are at the virtual podium, I would like to recognize your predecessor, Jeff Smith, who has joined us today so that we can honor his service to the state system, our universities, and the trustees who guide them. So Jeff, I am now going to read a resolution in your honor. So again, I want you to visualize yourself with me at the podium with the light bulbs flashing and the microphones shoved in our faces. And here we go. Whereas Jeff Smith has served with distinction as president of the Pennsylvania Association of the Councils of Trustees since July 2018 to enhance student success, university success, to transform governance. And whereas President Smith's dedication to Slippery Rock University has been exemplified by nearly 7 years of service on the Council of Trustees, including his tenure as chair. And whereas President Smith led Pact through a transformative year that saw increased levels of trustee engagement across the system and resulted in important advancements in governance. Therefore, be it resolved that the state system expresses its gratitude and admiration for the leadership of President Smith has provided Pact and for his continued dedication to the state system, Slippery Rock University, and his community. Jeff, I have so enjoyed my time working with you these past 2 years. We made great leaps and bounds. You were really instrumental in elevating governance as one of our prongs of system redesign. And I invite you now to say a few words.
Okay, well, thank you. I can't tell you how special this is to me. Some of you know that when I was 11 or 12, my father became a professor at Shippensburg. And I remember riding my bike up on campus, watching what in my mind were all the important people walk around the campus. But when it was time for me to go to college, my father told me, stay away from teaching because there's no money in it. And for somebody who only earned $2,600 in his first year of teaching, that made sense and I listened. But 7, 8 years ago, when I got my call from the governor's office, asking if I'd like to be a trustee at Slippery Rock, I jumped at it. Not because I had any real educational experience, but it was finally a chance in a small way to follow in my father's footsteps and work in the family business. So, over the past several years, my father's health really declined. And, when I'd go visit him, I'd always tell him what his grandkids were up to. And then I'd give him a PASHE update. And he liked both of them. Shortly after the last Board of Governor meeting, I got the call that my dad had contracted the virus in the nursing home where he was at. And they were good enough to let me go make a final visit. And I knew it was my last time, but I went through my usual litany of updates. Holly's getting her doctorate at Kent, Becky's still deployed, Michael's ice cream business is doing great, and went on through the whole kid update. Then I gave him my PASHE update, and I told him that I was going to get recognized at this meeting. And I talked a little bit about how, the two of us had made a difference. Even though his impact was a lot greater than mine. but I had my moments. And, you know, if I had my way, would be the Bobby and Barry Bonds or the Ken Griffey and Ken Griffey Jr., the Pesci system. Reality is we're more like Yogi and Dale Barra in terms of accomplishments. So I don't know if he even heard me that day, but I'd like to think he did, and that his final thoughts of me were that, you know, we both made Pesci better. So I really appreciate this. But the guy who really made me appreciate and care for the state system and make me want to do my part a little better is the one who deserves all this credit. And that was Dr. William Smith, Shippensburg. So thanks to you and thanks to him. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jeff. That was really beautiful and really moving. And we're thinking about him as well, and sending a lot of love to your family. Okay, that concludes that portion of the agenda. And I would now like to turn our attention to the consent agenda.
Hey, excuse me, Madam Chairwoman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Roy.
I just have a question. I don't know if it would be under this part of the meeting or a different part, but I don't see anything on the agenda regarding the decision to cancel all the fall sports. Would now be a time to talk about that, or would there be a part later on in the meeting to talk about that? Because I don't see that on the agenda at all.
It's not on the agenda per se.
And will likely be addressing the fall startup during his remarks. So that'd be a good time.
So we'll make sure we address it then when Dan speaks. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to the consent agenda, which consists of meeting minutes on page 3 of your packet, committee assignments update on page 12, and the loan covenants update on page 13. These items are administrative in nature, and we will take them up in one motion unless any member wishes to pull any particular item out. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there, thank you. Are there any opposed? Thank you very much. The consent agenda passes. And with that, I will turn it over to Dan for your remarks and your report before we go back into today's business.
Thanks. Whoops, can you hear me? Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Great. Wow. A lot of resolutions and a lot of motion. And I feel, and I've had this discussion with a number of the people that we've honored, that it's more than a pity that we don't have an opportunity to hold these ceremonial actions in a face-to-face way, because it's the service that several people have rendered to the system over a lifetime in every case deserves so much more attention than we can provide it in this medium. And I would ask us to remember that when our lives get back to some kind of normal, that we can honor Jeff and Shalita and Ken in the normal way. A couple of things, I guess, on that theme, and I just wanted to, reflect on, Jeff and Shalita and Ken were all here when I arrived. I think they all interviewed me in one way, shape, or form. And, instantly, I think with all three able to establish and really deliberately working on all parts, a new kind of bond, or at least determined to address some of the cultural challenges that we knew we experienced. And, and it was grounded in, I think our shared passion for our mission, for our public mission, I think it was grounded in the deep personal experiences that Jeff and his father clearly had, that Ken and Shalita have clearly had in their lifetime service to the system. Our passion for what we do for our students, our passion for public higher education. But there was more than that, and I want to call that out, and I want to say thank you. In every single instance, we have deliberately strived to be completely transparent with one another. And transparency means a lot of different things. In a public setting like this, of course, it means that we should be clear about where we're going and what we're thinking and what the data show and what our budgets are. But it goes deeper than that into interpersonal relationships. You know, some people talk about the no surprises rule. Jeff and Ken and Shalita were faithful partners with me, and I hope I with them, that we would communicate routinely about, you know, things we saw coming that might have an impact on the constituencies that they represented or the communities that they served. That openness and that transparency in our interpersonal relationships, you know, helped us build a kind of a bond. And I want to say thank you for that. It demonstrated not just a passion for the institution, but the highest, most impeccable degree of integrity. And I can't tell you how profoundly important that was for me as an onboarding chancellor, because it established a high bar for me in terms of my establishing my values and the way that I operate. All of you have been great partners. You have been great mentors. Ken, in your own way, you are a fine strategist. You are probably the finest higher education strategist I think I've ever met. Shalita, you have a passion for the work which is unparalleled. And frankly, you have infected me with your enthusiasm, but also helped me understand at a much deeper level that not just the role, because I understand the role as a technocrat, but the worldview of your colleagues, and I appreciate that. And Jeff, I can't say enough about how important your guidance has been in navigating often very complex relationships that exist. The councils of trustees have grown, in my estimation, to play a very important role. I said this yesterday in executive session. You know, we ask more and more of them to review budgets, to review sustainability plans, not just to look at the performance and support their presidents, you know, to do hiring and performance evaluation, but to sort of help strategically guide and advise the universities to act in a genuinely stewardship role. And that's a new ask, and it's a big ask. And I appreciate the partnership that you have shown in evolving our relationship in that way. So thanks to each and every one of you. On fall, obviously this is an incredibly challenging time. I just want to say a couple of things. I want to thank the presidents and their leadership teams. I want to thank them publicly. This is true across higher education, what is happening, but I see it up close and personal here. I work every week. I spend twice a week, 2 hours at a time with our 14 presidents. And we speak about a whole range of topics, but we have focused intensively, as one would, as one must, on how we navigate the most challenging circumstances higher education is likely to face this century and probably last. These issues aren't merely ones having to do with what happens in fall and what the impacts are with respect of different populations. They have existential consequence for public higher education. They have existential consequence, not just in terms of the finances, which people tend to focus on, but in terms of the public trust, or what remains of the public trust that we are given and that we are held. I have worked with people who are spending countless hours with their teams, thinking through infinite variety of possibilities, for their universities in ways which take account of their students and their region and their communities and their facilities, all of which are fundamentally different. I have read and engaged in the development of every single university plan, and we have engaged with each other. And while we can quibble and debate and discuss around the edges, have you considered this? Why aren't you doing that? You cannot second guess the quality and in the integrity and the creativity of the thinking, driven by a passion for two things: our students and their continued progress for the degree, and the communities that we serve, including, of course, our faculty and staff, but also the broader communities in which we are hosted. I am concerned that we enter the fall for a whole variety of reasons, some of which have already been touched upon. One of my greatest concerns is that our leadership, not just at the most senior levels, but deeply into the universities, is, as everywhere else across higher education and in K-12, exhausted, navigating complexity that seems to change almost on a daily basis. I want to thank my colleagues for the work that they're doing. It is heroic. None of us signed up for this. Personally, when I went to leadership school, when I went to chancellor school, I paid hooky for the session on pandemic response. Funnily enough, they didn't have one. I want to thank our colleagues in the Pennsylvania Department of Education at PDE for working closely with higher education leadership across the state and developing what I believe are have become a nationally recognized set of guidelines for education and thinking through fall. I expect things will continue to evolve and to change. I'm confident that our presidents have the tools that they need through our framework to navigate the complexities that they face. Last point, which I wasn't prepared to make, but Governor Roy, since you brought it up, just to point out that sports at our universities is not actually something that's in the prerogative of the board or the chancellor or the chancellor's office. It is governed by PSAC, which is an association, and PSAC is responsive, obviously, to the work of the NCAA. I believe that one of our presidents is the chair of PSAC, who may be able to speak to the decision if that's something we are interested in talking about, but it is well beyond our purview. Let me leave it there. We have other topics to discuss in the course of the meeting. I want to extend my profound appreciation for countless number of people spending countless hours working through some of the most challenging, intellectually engaging, and probably profoundly impactful decisions that need to be taken in this industry and in others. Thank you, Chair.
Madam Chairwoman?
Yes, sir.
I would like some more information. It's my understanding that the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference, they have a board, and I think, I may be mistaken, but I think every university has a member on that board. So I guess my question is, if the president of that board is on the meeting right now, they could address, I guess it was yesterday or the day before, they decided to cancel fall sports. And we have this meeting today, this public meeting where all 14 presidents and all 20 board members are present, as well as the general public. But a decision was made 2 days before this meeting to cancel fall sports. And it just seems like that should have been talked about at this meeting, at least to kind of, find out what's going on and get input from everybody involved. It just seems inappropriate that a major decision like that was made 2 days before a board meeting. And there's a lot of questions. What's going to happen with the coaches? Are they being laid off since they're not going to be coaching? Or are they going to still get paid? What about the athletic trainers? What about all the athletic directors at the universities. If there's no sports, what happens with all those people? Are they furloughed? Do they stay on the payroll? Were the student athletes consulted at all? Did they have anything to say about this? Were local council of trustees, were they involved in this decision? Was their input heard? I would be kind of interested in just hearing what the president of the PSAC would have to say about that.
All right. Thank you, Representative Roy. Obviously, yeah, we at the Board of Governors, I can't answer your question specifically. Dan, do we have?
I think just to underscore that this is an issue which is not in the purview of the board. Obviously, information is very important. So I would turn to a president or presidents who want to address this.
Yeah, are there any presidents who would like to address this?
Yes, Chairwoman Shapiro, as the chair of the Council of Presidents for Athletics. This is Jerry Jones at California University. I will address that. Thank you. And the 18 presidents, 13 of the 14 state system schools and 5 schools not part of the PSAC make up of the state system make up PSAC. And we met many times over the summer before coming to this decision. And the entire conference, as I've said, we've worked very hard over these last few months to prepare for the return of sports on our campuses this fall. However, it became apparent that the safe conduct of sports under the guidelines of social distancing was untenable for our members. And we cannot place our student athletes at greater risk than the general student body. And despite our planning and collective efforts, it became clear that we were not able to do so. These are unprecedented times that we are working in. And to address your question, Governor Roy, when that decision was made, it was made in consultation not only with the commissioner of PSAC, but also with the athletic trainers. The athletic trainers worked with the coaches. The coaches had an opportunity to share that information with the student athletes before the announcement of the press release. So this did not come as a surprise. We were all saddened by that decision that had to be made. In addition to that, the conference and its member institutions will develop guidelines for all teams to continue individual skill instruction, as well as strength and conditioning activities under social distancing protocols by the end of summer. And the determination as to when winter or spring sports may begin, workouts and practices will be decided at a later date. So we have suspended sports for this point in time, and we will revisit all of that to see if there is an opportunity to have a season for the winter or the spring term. But in the safety of all our student athletes and all of the coaches and other individuals involved with sports, we suspended that decision. And we are not the only conference to do so. And if I'll answer more questions if you have those as well.
Thank you, President Jones.
Thank you for that information. I do appreciate that. Now, yesterday, PIAA, they announced that high school sports are going to continue as normal for all 500 school districts. So high school sports are not being canceled. So it does seem to be quite a bit different than that. But what is going to happen with all the people at the universities that are involved with the athletic programs? Are they all staying on normal salaries and benefits, or are there going to be positions furloughed since there are no fall sports?
Those will be decisions that will be decided at those individual universities. And as I said, there will be the opportunity for the universities to continue individual skill instruction, as well as strength and conditioning activities for the individuals. So they will still be working. Many of those individuals will still be working, but that will be left up to those individual universities. And again, there are 17 of the state system schools, and 17. There are 13 state system schools and 5 universities outside of the state system of higher education in this conference.
And
Representative Roy, could I add a comment?
Yes, Chris.
I just our guidance is that we are not permitted to pay people who are not performing work. This is very complex, but as a general guiding principle, that's what we're going to follow. If, and again, this decision was just made, and this is not only in the area of athletics, this is related to residence halls and all our other aspects of the campus. And in principle, we are not going to be spending money paying people who are not working. We're finding ways to keep them employed. There are opportunities that are out there. I will tell you that in anticipation of this decision or this impending decision, we held off on renewing contracts for our assistant coaches. Where we're going to land with the regular coaches, that remains to be seen. It's a work in progress, but that's the guiding principle. We're not paying people who aren't working.
So Mr. Roy, Governor Roy and board, please, I want to note that this is not board business. This is outside of our purview. I don't mean to be rude in cutting off this discussion, but I do want to get back to board business. I invite anybody who wants to discuss this further to take it offline with the presidents and discuss it in that way. Okay. I would like
to just one final thought. I just want to clarify that this is a very major decision, and I think that the presidents should have picked up the phone and talked with the board members about this. I mean, it's a very big decision, and I read about it in the newspaper, and that doesn't seem to be appropriate. You know, when I have people asking me, "Hey, Brad, why is Slippery Rock in Edinburgh? Why are they canceling sports this fall?" It's like, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that. And I'm on the PASHE board. I mean, there should be good communication. And I realize it's a separate organization, but 13 of the 15 members of that board are PASHE people.
13 of 18. Yes.
Okay.
13 of 18.
All right. So,
and I just don't think the board should be shut out of major decisions. I mean, it's a pretty big thing, and I don't know. It's just it makes you wonder what other major decisions are being done behind the backs of the board that we should at least be consulted on. I just think it's a serious situation. I think there should be clear communication. I think clear channels of communication are absolutely essential when trying to manage something as large as the PASHE system. And I just don't think major decisions should be made without the knowledge of all the players involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your point. I think that we can always do better with communications, and we will, but I will note again, this is not in the purview of a board business, and I don't think would have been taken up as a debate by this board in any case. But you are right. I do acknowledge that you know, it's a major decision, and we will work harder on those communication levels. Let me now go back to our business, and Dan, presumably you're still at the podium, and as you are, I would like to now recognize Dr. Marsha Welsh, president of East Stroudsburg University. Dr. Welsh, this is your last meeting with us before you retire from East Stroudsburg, and we want to honor your service to the state system, the university, and to the students, faculty, and staff of East Stroudsburg University. And so with your permission, I invite you to be at the podium with me, with the light bulbs going off, celebrating you as I read this resolution in your honor. Whereas Dr. Marsha Welsh has served with distinction and integrity as East Stroudsburg University's 13th and first female president since 2012. And whereas Dr. Welsh has been an inspiring source of East Stroudsburg University warrior pride for students and colleagues as she led the institution to new opportunities in health sciences, elevated academic programs, improved financial sustainability, increased scholarship funding. She has fostered student diversity and more. And whereas Dr. Welsh has dedicated her energy, creativity, and heart to the university and to the entire Poconos region for 8 years, serving on several education and economic development boards, all in an effort to make the region an attractive and prosperous place to work, learn, and live. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Governors of Pennsylvania's State System of Higher Education expresses deep gratitude to Dr. Welsh for her service to East Stroudsburg University, congratulates her on a distinguished career, and wishes her happiness in the years ahead. And Marsha, before I ask you to say a few words, first of all, this resolution is beautiful, but did not acknowledge your shoes, which I want to at this time. Also, I would like to call first on Dr. Driscoll, who would like to share some thoughts on behalf of your fellow presidents.
Thank you, Chair Shapiro. President Welsh and I started as state system presidents on July 1st, 2012. We both attended the Ask You New Presidents Forum later that month and became good friends over a couple of large steaks and a couple of even larger martinis. Given our long working relationship, I am especially honored to be asked to say a few words about Marsha on behalf of our colleague presidents. This may also be the first time in the last 8 years that Marsha won't interrupt me while I'm talking.
Oh, yes, I will. You never know.
Yeah, see, that was an opening. Seriously, as her colleagues have noted, hers will be a tough voice to replace. She is a resolute, outspoken, honest, and feisty advocate for students and for their success, especially for students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds and for students of color. She cares deeply about her students and has developed a special bond with them throughout her time as president. She is remarkably passionate about East Stroudsburg University. We have all witnessed her incredible advocacy and learned from her implementation of best practices to make ESU stronger. It is abundantly clear that ESU and all of its students now and in the years ahead will prosper thanks to her dynamic leadership and vision. She has also served as a key partner with the presidents and our work on the success of the state system. She truly cares about her colleagues, whether in supporting new colleagues as they work through the grind of a presidential search process, or in quietly reaching out to one of us when she senses we are struggling or need someone to talk with. She has been key in building the strong collegial working culture the presidents share. Marsha is a true warrior, fighting for social justice and helping to ensure that we all do the right things for our students. It is important to note that Marsha is a fun person to have as a colleague, whether that's debriefing and decompressing at the bar after a board meeting, or when providing us, Madam Chair, with a window into the remarkably wide array of women's shoes that are apparently available in the marketplace. I do understand that her students watch for her social media posts about her daily shoe choice. Again, she is all about the students and finds unique ways to bond with them. Marsha, please know that we, the university presidents of the state system, will miss you dearly. We wish you and Lou the very best in retirement, and we do look forward to seeing you again in more relaxed times. Thank you for your partnership.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was wonderful. And see, Marsha, I told you, but we were remiss in not putting shoes into the resolution. But I would invite you now to please say a few words.
First, I want to thank Mike for wearing the white mink tie I gave him. I love it. I do want you to know that serving ESU, the state system, and especially our warriors has been truly an honor and a privilege for the last 8 years. I want to note that in the mid-60s, government-funded research and development in the United States was at 1.8% of GDP. It is now at 0.7% of GDP. Government typically funds research and development that is higher risk with possibly lower return on investment. Thus, the impact of disinvestment in science has been devastating for us as a country. Today, we're in the middle of a raging pandemic without the vaccines or adequate high-speed testing or treatments that we need, and our supply chains are broken because of a reliance on too few sources. And I question if we aren't doing the same thing with state system higher education. You will see, if you don't remember from yesterday, under public higher education appropriations per FTE student, the average for the state system is $5,200 per FTE. The average nationally is about $8,200 per FTE. So we're about, as a system, 3,000 below national average. ESU has always been in about, since I've been with ESU, has been in about the bottom 4 receiving appropriations from the state of the 14 in the system. So we're about 4,000, about 50% of the national average in actual appropriations per FTE. System redesign is going to address some of these problems, some of these financial challenges, but it will not address all of them. We still have to pay our bills. We still have to support our students at a level that's appropriate for their need. And the cost savings, I don't believe, from system redesign will be enough. Add to that the devastating impact of the pandemic. ESU now has 45% students of color and about just shy of 40% first generation students, which is a huge challenge on many fronts as we try to meet the needs of a very diverse student body. As with government funded research and development, these students are high risk, but I have to tell you, they have great potential when it comes to return on investment for the Commonwealth. Well, I'm very, very proud of ESU's growth in the area of innovation and entrepreneurship, and I do want to thank the faculty, staff, and students who have stepped up to be a part of that, to start businesses, and to really, we try to encourage them to be inventive and creative in everything they do. I've been very privileged to have strong, engaged Council of Trustee members, especially the chair, Pat Ross. I want to personally thank all of them for their support during the past 8 years. I also want to thank my leadership team. Nothing would be possible without us working with common goals and a focused vision. In addition to working with my colleagues at the Dixon Center, the Chancellor and his direct reports, I have so enjoyed working with my president colleagues, both current and past, and they have always been there for me. If I text and I say, do you have a minute to talk? The phone will ring. They have always been there, and it's been great to have such strong partners. They have incredibly difficult jobs and need your support, the support of the Board of Governors on so many fronts. At times during my tenure with PASHE, I have seen the Board of Governors work against the presidents without really consulting with them to fully understand their needs or their challenges. I encourage you to always keep lines of communication open with these incredible people. Get to know them and to trust their judgment. They are really smart people. They expect to be held accountable, and they ask the same of you in your leadership roles. As I leave ESU, I am so proud of our faculty, staff, and administration, and most especially our students, our warriors. You are incredible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marsha. That was beautiful. We wish you well. We will miss you very, very much. Now, let me turn to Don Hauser, Governor Don Hauser, Chair of the Governance and Leadership Committee, to give us an update on the work of the Faculty Shared Governance Commission, which you also chair, Don. Thank you very much. Let me turn it over to you. And let me just say that after Don's update, and we're going to do some screen sharing, terrific. After Don's update, after we go through this deck, we will take a short break. So Don, it's all yours.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And I also want to thank the commission members for their commitment to this effort during this trying time and this process that we've gone through since, Madam Chair, you created the commission. The commission has been hard at work since it launched last fall, with the exception of a hiatus where everyone turned their attention to COVID this spring and early into the summertime. And the slide, I think Randy started the slide deck, so you're going to see that which is an excerpt of things that are also on the system website. And it shows a timeline of what we've completed and what we have yet to present to the board coming up, which we hope to do soon. So you see that timeline of the work of the commission and how we've really gotten to work here. And you can see we're focused on organizing the membership of the commission, and at the beginning of September of last fall, the universities organized faculty elections so that each university would have a faculty voice on an interim faculty council. And that IFC is chaired by our faculty liaison to the board, Dr. Phillips, and they immediately got to work and chose 3 members to serve on our commission. And the commission members are also on the PASHE website for those interested in viewing those. So once the commission was fully formed, we set about understanding the landscape of shared governance in the state system as it relates to what exists nationally. And most importantly, we developed guiding principles for our system level shared governance and drafted a matrix of issues that might be addressed by a system level faculty shared governance body. Those documents are also on the PASHE website for you to view. These were vitally important tools as we work to develop specific and actionable recommendations for this board to consider. Right now, we're gathering feedback from stakeholders as we go. In fact, the members of the IFC have been useful sounding board as the commission has done its work. They gave us valuable feedback as everybody's done on the commission on the guiding principles and the issues matrix. And we look forward to hearing these insights on the draft recommendation that's now out there for internal review. And so the commission adjusted its timeline because of COVID and what's been happening on campuses. And we've gone about getting more stakeholder input on the work that we've done. And so right now, we are close to sharing and bringing before the board an actionable item for policy to formalize faculty shared governance and formalize participation of faculty member on our Board of Governors. And we hope to have that action item to this board at our next meeting, which I believe is in October. So I'll end that by saying thank you, everyone. Thank you for the commission members. Madam Chair, thank you for your leadership on this issue and for our PASHE staff who have lent their time to this effort. We really appreciate all the work that everybody's put into it. And I think we'll have a pretty good product, a first of its kind product in the nation to this board in October for review and hopefully a positive vote to make it board policy. And with that, I'll conclude.
Dawn, thank you so much. This is tremendous work. Thank you to everybody who is participating in it. I'll just note that in your board packet, I think between pages 15 and now I can't remember, 21, I think. Yeah, between pages 15 to 21 has more detail, including the principles on which the commission is basing its work, and the laying out of what at this point the framework for the process that will undergo input. And the only other thing I want to say about this is that this is not at all an isolated or kind of item. I was going to say not even a parallel item. I mean, it's parallel in that the work is going on, with this commission to be presented to the board, but it is intricately related to our redesign work and the idea of ensuring that an appropriate faculty shared governance process is part of system decision-making going forward, and obviously never more critically needed than now, also because of our major efforts to bring the diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda to the forefront of our work as we proceed with redesign. So this is to my mind, hugely important work. It speaks to that third prong of the original three prongs we laid out with redesign, which is excellence and transparency and leadership and governance. And Don, you're just doing incredible work to lead this effort. So I think at this point, I'm told by my boss, Randy, that we're going to be taking a break before we continue. Randy, how long of a break do we have?
10 minutes. We'll come back at 10:42.
All right, 10:42, everybody. Synchronize your watches, and I will see you then. Thank you.
Board members, when you return to your desk, if you could just turn on your video, that will help us know that you're back. All right, Madam Chair, it's yours to take away as you like.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Randy. Thank you, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed your biology break. Now I am going to turn the meeting over to Dan to walk us through item 9A, the next steps in system redesign, which is the focus of today's meeting. So board members, if you will find that in your packet. Yeah,
And we'll be sharing the deck live too.
You'll be sharing the, oh, fine. Okay, so you don't have to fumble around like I'm doing in your packet because we will have the deck on the screen. Dan, please take it away.
Great, thanks so much. And so I'm going to start with just a quick update on where we are with system redesign, and then I'll talk about where we're going. There is our overview of system redesign. And remember, you know, the purpose, what we're trying to accomplish here is to expand educational opportunities for our students, for all students in Pennsylvania, and to do so in a way that's financially sustaining, allows us to continue. Into the 21st century, we have a five-part approach. I'm going to quickly walk through the bottom up from the bottom up, just to give you an update on where we are. Obviously, the pandemic and the attending kind of issues that we had to deal with have focused our attention very, very sharply, and will continue to focus our attention on the highest possible priorities. And you can refer to the board materials for a little more detail in what I'm about to say. Most of our, I think the greatest accomplishment we've had is under strengthening our governance and accountability. We've put in place a range of enterprise management tools that run from budgeting to planning to performance management. I think the sort of the highlights here for me are the work we're doing, creating a sort of a new leadership structure for the system, one which embraces obviously the president working closely with the chancellor as an executive leadership group, a range of functional subgroups where we rely on our vice presidents, and obviously looking forward to incorporating some kind of a body which enables us to achieve a greater degree of shared faculty governance. So there's a lot going on there. Sustainability planning, our ability to look into the future and to plan for our continued financial viability is also grows out of this work. And so obviously, and that will occupy a good chunk of time in the rest of the meeting. Building a shared infrastructure. In October last year, we launched a shared services group. We have appointed Sharon Minnick as its director. It is directly responsible to the executive leadership group, i.e. the presidents, including myself. It has spent a great deal of time under Sharon's leadership developing a real clear understanding of what our services are, what people can expect of them, the service level agreements. And so we're moving forward in a variety of areas, some which were existing, labor relations, obviously. Payroll have added advanced data analytics, HR, procurement, and we're working on IT governance as well. So as the pandemic sort of descended and the challenges that we face, and we'll talk about more in the rest of the meeting, became more severe, we have accelerated the work in this area and continue to do so because it offers us considerable promise. We've also already seen some considerable achievements, so that's going forward full bore. In the third area, identifying and scaling innovation, this was really about giving ourselves the sort of tools to serve students who need our help. And who we're not serving maybe as well as we can, whether through online learning, career-aligned credentials, et cetera, but also in terms of improving our students' success and ensuring their persistence and graduation rates continue to grow. Some of this work has been scaled back as the pressures of the pandemic and the sustainability planning, but it continues in a variety of ways, which will become real as we go into the rest of the conversation, particularly with respect to online learning. And workforce aligned kind of programming. Enhancing culture and talent has been a central tenet of the system redesign. We launched a culture survey, and of course, just as it was about to be engaged, the pandemic descended. So we've obviously dialed back on that. The work building the system leadership group, the executive leadership group, the shared governance is obviously an important part of this layer as well. And I look forward to our new portfolio of effort in diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I believe will also address issues here. And with respect to engaging partners, obviously we spent an enormous amount of time, and I want to call out my colleagues, Cody and Jennifer in particular, who led the profoundly important initiative that we're going to again be speaking about later today to move a legislative agenda very effectively through the General Assembly. And we're grateful for their efforts, but also the considerable amount of support that was shown for that. So we're on pace. When the pandemic sort of set in, you began to see what the potential impact were for the system. I'm awfully glad, Madam Chair, that we got started on this journey a couple of years ago, and that we're not starting today, because that would really be hard. So anyway, let me just draw a breath. I know we're going to be running short on time, but I don't want to preempt discussion. If there are any specific issues on the sort of overall system redesign, again, more detail is in your packet. Let me just draw a breath here and see if there are any questions.
Any questions?
And we'll remind board members to use your raise hand feature, which is part of the participants tab in your Zoom menu.
You're also welcome to clap if you wish. Now I can't turn it off, Randy.
There are no hands raised.
Oh no, it's my clap. Anyway. All right, I'm gonna go forward with a clap on my screen because I can't seem to turn it off. Okay, so let me take you through a journey then, as we have been in. I'm going to really focus now on sustainability planning, and this has been an issue that we've been dealing with obviously last year as we framed the sustainability planning policy and the approaches that are outlined in the procedures standards. Received initial draft of sustainability plans from universities, from 9 universities that have some significant financial challenges in December of last year. Spent an awful lot of time reviewing them, thinking about them, working with them, and then going back to the well and asking our colleagues to think harder and to move more quickly and aggressively, because the challenges that we're facing are that serious. As we've been going through that exercise, and of course we've received a second version of the sustainability plans in June, and I want to acknowledge the work that has gone into them. It has been done in a consultative fashion on each of our universities. It has been done very effectively. The work is the highest possible quality. It outlines in a comparable way the really significant challenges we're faced. We're going to come to that. As we have been watching this, and I say we as the executive leadership group, me and the president's been watching this process unfold. We have been looking forward to this meeting, this July board meeting, because we realize that as a result of the work we're seeing emerge and the discussion around it, we are in a position to need to recommend to the board how to proceed from where we are. So I'm going to take you along that journey. I'm going to talk about the problem as we have framed it. I'm going to sort of define and evaluate possible responses to the circumstances that we find ourselves in, and I'm going to make a recommendation. I'm going to move pretty quickly through the problem, framing the problem, because there's nothing in here that should be new. If anything in here is new to you, don't admit it, because it might suggest that you haven't been paying attention. I know you have. Okay, so let's just go quickly and remind ourselves where we are. And Randy, I'm going to hop through the next several slides pretty quick. Okay, so fundamental challenge really has to do with the level of state support, and it's demonstrated here. These are system averages. All these slides are going to be about show system averages. It's really important to recognize, as Marsha has already pointed out, that these averages, there's an enormous degree of variability across our universities. But there you see a fundamental challenge that we're facing, and that is that the proportion of our revenues that are derived from state appropriation have fallen from 50% to 27%. And as a consequence, our tuition has increased to make up the difference. And of course, you'll see that our enrollments have declined. And as more and more, we rely more and more on tuition, enrollment decline becomes a serious financial challenge. You go to the next slide. Obviously, as state support deteriorates, universities are forced to raise their tuition. And you can see that we have done that pretty regularly. Since 2012-13. And of course, the challenge when you raise tuition is that, if you go to the next slide, Randy, is that it causes really serious issues, puts pressure on students, obviously, and shows up in our enrollments, right? And if you go to the next slide, you'll see the effect, the combined effect of the enrollment decline is happening most quickly among students really in our sort of historic marketplace, those who rely on a public education, in this case showing from families earning between $48,000 and $110,000 have shown the most rapid decline. So, it begins to suggest that we've probably maxed out on the extent to which we can continue to raise tuition, and the board obviously has taken very difficult decisions these last 2 years to ensure that tuition maintains flat. All right, so continue. The enrollment saga is complicated by the fact that we're experiencing a pretty significant shift nationally, but certainly here in Pennsylvania as well, in the size of the high school leaving population. You can see there that that downward trend is expected to continue from 2025-26. So we're right now in a little bit of a modest growth period, right? And the problem that we're facing, so that enrollments are hard to get because our traditional population, 90% of our students come directly out of high school. The problem that we're facing, if you go, is not just demographic. If you go to the next slide, it's actually we're losing our share of that declining population. The gap between the size of the high school leaving population and the share that we're able to attract into the Pennsylvania state system is growing, right? So, our universities, not all of them, but many of them, most of our universities draw most of their students from the surrounding 5 or 6 counties. Even in this growth period, the projections of enrollments are trending behind. So at best, we're treading water, and in most cases, we're actually falling behind in terms of the expected enrollments based on demographic trend. So you ask yourself, why are we losing market share of this traditional student population? There's a whole variety of reasons, and this is probably the most active and important source of debate, but let me give you a couple of insights. If you go to the next slide, Randy. One of the issues is that we have lost, or we're losing, our affordability advantage. If you look at 2009-10, the net average price that a student would pay to come, these are averages again, there's variation across the system. The net average price that a student would pay to come to Pennsylvania State System University was about the national average, about the national 4-year public average, and it was a good $7,000 or $8,000 or $9,000 less than what they would expect to pay at the nearest competitor, whether it's state related or private. Flash forward to 2017-18, and you see that advantage has, we're losing, that advantage has shrunk, that affordability advantage has shrunk considerably. We look at this slide and we say, gosh, we need to do better in raising money. I mean, it's driven by the fact that we have raised tuition and been slow to match tuition increases with institutional aid. And we look at the slide and say, gosh, we got to do better, raise more money. But the purpose of public education is not to raise more money. The purpose of public education is to maintain an affordable pathway for students who cannot approach that level of tuition. The purpose of public education is not to privatize it. And if one does privatize it, look what happens to the price point. It drifts to the price point of the market. And look at our price point in 2017-18, net average price, in comparison to the national 4-year public average. The national 4-year public average demonstrates the purpose of public higher education is an affordable pathway into a sustaining career. Why is this important? It is important because, and I think Denise made this point in her remarks, it's important for 2 reasons. The state economy requires that 60% of its adults today have some form of post-secondary education. Today, 47% of our adult population have some form. We are 13% behind. And guess what? There are not enough wealthy white people to close that gap. Can't do it. So from an economic development perspective, it is essential to have an affordable higher education option. From an equity, a social mobility perspective, higher education is demonstrably the most reliable pathway into a sustaining career. right? Into the middle class, into and beyond the middle class. And so the challenges that are inherent in the long-term privatization, yes, introduce efficiencies, become, more effective public-private partnership, is that it pushes your price point up and it drives the enrollments down of people this state relies on for its secure and healthy future. Next slide. Just to make the point that higher education is also, another enrollment challenge. It's a very crowded marketplace in higher education. And we look at a lot of, and this is here we are in orange, surrounded by other education providers. Obviously, we are the state-owned system, but let's not kid ourselves. As a result of the expenditure of FIA dollars, public funding is spread very widely across all of Pennsylvania. So, enrollments are hard to get. We're also challenged by the fact that it's an overcrowded market. Next slide. Okay, let me stop there. Let me just pause there, Cindy, before moving on to the next section. I mean, that was sort of an overview of the narrative. Is the kind of the story about where we are, the problems we're trying to address ourselves to. But I did want to draw a breath there in case there are any questions or issues.
All right, any questions or comments to this point?
Again, you can use the raise hand feature in the participants tab if you have.
Okay.
So far, no raised hands, Madam Chair.
Hearing none.
Okay, let's continue. Thank you.
So obviously, these trends show up in a variety of ways that are well known in our finances, in particular, in our ability to sustain ourselves. And I'm going to refer to them this time in terms of the way they really beginning now, fundamentally to challenge our operating model. So the economics of higher education, public higher education, are challenging, but they are not complicated, right? Basically, a university uses the mix of state appropriated dollars and enrollment driven revenues, student tuition and fees, room and board. And they use those combination of revenues in order to support a range of academic programs, services, facilities, et cetera. And when that mix of enrollment driven revenues and state appropriated dollars is good, you can put on enough academic programs and enough student services and enough supports to drive the enrollments you need to sustain the operation. It's a self-fulfilling kind of, it's a virtuous cycle. So here's what happens when your enrollments decline, along with your state level, go to the next slide, Randy, along with your state level of support. You're forced to rely on tuition increases, driving down the ability of students to enroll. It begins to undermine your opportunity, right? Eventually you begin to pare back on the number of services and supports and academic programs that you can offer, which begins to undermine your ability to attract the students you need to sustain the enterprise. It's a vicious cycle, right? Contraction as a means of meeting financial exigency forces cuts in programs and services that further exacerbates contraction. That's what we're beginning to see happening in our sustainability plans. So as we saw that beginning to emerge in the data, and this was from our earliest engagement with sustainability plans from the end of last year, in the context of the executive leadership group, as your leaders, as your CEOs, we set ourselves, frankly, the difficult task of trying to come up with a range of options that we could recommend to the board, because we see ourselves at a critical moment where this unraveling is now a real and very live potential at a number of our universities. And of course, as you know, we're not 14 institutions which are wholly independent. We are a part of a single corporate structure, which means financial weakness everywhere, anywhere across the system, tugs everywhere across the system. The greatest single risk that's faced by all of our universities, every single one of them, is the weakness financially at any other. right? We have issued loans in the past, and we've done some interesting things with state appropriated dollars and reallocated them in order to make adjustments so that universities could, basically balance their books. And those are all important things to do. But given our corporate structure, in some ways, whether we did them or not, we would still be on the hook for those financial shortfalls. That is the way we are structured. So given that we're facing this situation, we have been asking ourselves, what can we advise the board in July when we're going to be faced with a number of options, including following the sustainability plans that I'll talk about in a second. So let me outline the options that we're looking at. They're all serious. Sorry, intervening slide. Pulling all this information together, spending a great deal of time thinking through it, we've come to the following assumptions that we have used to frame this process. That there simply are not enough enrollments available to support 14 comprehensive universities operating as standalone entities in a shrinking market for the kind of education that we offer: traditional, residential, baccalaureate seeking, especially where we are losing our affordability advantage. It's probably the critical and most difficult assumption to frame, but eventually we just have to say it out loud. The market is not big to sustain all of us operating the way we're operating. And then the other thing, I think the other framing assumptions I think are clear. Our operating model is unsustainable. Our costs are not aligned with our revenues. We have too many redundant, suboptimized, and competing academic programs. Some of our universities are burdened with housing debt, which is very challenging when you're seeing declining enrollments and not able to fill the housing. We have done, I think, great work in moving in new directions, online learning, some workforce aligned programming, but we haven't been as agile as we would need to be to keep up with higher education generally in serving students who need our help too, but are not within our traditional focus. Obviously, the challenges faced by our financially weaker institutions are putting pressure on others at a time when they can least afford it. Talk a little bit about state advocacy in a minute. Obviously aggressive. We need to continue to be aggressive in advocating for state support, but we also need to be pragmatic. And the challenges that we're facing, if they were urgent before the pandemic, and they were, they are even more so now. This is not news. This is the burden of the NCHEMS report, which was published in 2017. It was the burden of the RAND report that was published in 2018. We have known this for a very long time, and the situation has only deteriorated. Excellent. So in that context, the planning, we set ourselves the task of saying, what would we advise the board? If our mission is to sustain affordable, high quality education for all of Pennsylvania, given those assumptions, looking at those trends, taking a pragmatic look at the trends we are navigating, what do we advise the board about the future of the system? So we have five options. Each of them is serious. There they are. I'm going to go through one at a time. Dissolve the system, close universities, substantially increase state funding, stay on our current path, implement the sustainability plans, or pursue university integrations. It's not a novel set. Same set of issues were addressed in NCHEMS, RAND. They've been around for a while. Okay, go forward. Let's talk about each of them. They're all serious. There are people I have had discussions with over the year and a bit that of the almost 2 years that I've been here, there's a constituency behind each of these. So let's talk about them. So dissolving the system can be done in two ways. It's either de jure, formally, requiring active legislation, probably acts of legislation. But it can also happen de facto over time. If we are unable to arrest our financial decline, we will exhaust our reserves to zero, probably in about 5 or 6 years. And we will hand ourselves back, in effect, to the state as a bundle of debt. Obviously, dissolving the system has a number of effects. It would free universities of their financial independence on one another. It would put upward pressure, likely put upward pressure on net average price that we charge to students. That's what you're seeing happen now as a free market begins to enter into the supply of higher education almost uniformly across Pennsylvania. Creates greater uncertainty for financially challenged universities. How are they supported? Could potentially address oversaturation of higher education in Pennsylvania if universities were to cease operations. So dissolving the system, probably harder de jure than de facto. Next slide. Ceasing operations at some universities, closing universities, a topic. I don't think I ever get to a public meeting where it doesn't, many public meetings I get to and this comes up. It actually requires exercise of authority the board does not have, right? And the board, under the terms of the financial sustainability policy, could in effect cease certain operations at universities, but it could not close one. Closing universities would create education deserts, mostly in Western Pennsylvania, create enormous financial, but and the socioeconomic impacts on communities is, and I've spoken publicly about this. Closing a university is different than closing a base or a prison, also tough things to do. You lose jobs, communities rely on those jobs. But more importantly, or as importantly, communities rely on these universities to develop the talent they need to thrive, the professionals, the leaders, the business people. Jeff and his dad come through these universities, right? But even beyond, put all of the socioeconomic dislocation to the side. Just take a cold-hearted approach, an engineering approach to university closure. It puts enormous financial, remember our corporate structure, enormous financial burden for remaining universities, right? We did a little exercise where we just calculated the teach out costs at a handful, five of our universities, selecting from the sort of amongst the smaller. The average price tag, 150 to 250, $300 million per. Close 5, you're pushing $1 billion. Want to exhaust reserves quickly? Close 3 or 4 universities. Crushes, it's even if you can put aside the socioeconomic dislocation and the issues having to do with equity across rural and urban America and the issues having to do with just devastating, just put that to the side. It tips the system over financially. 3, next slide. Well, we can talk about state funding. Let's talk about state funding. So there's a number of ways to look at that. What would it take Pennsylvania, if Pennsylvania were average, we're 47th in the nation in terms of the level of support we offer higher education. What if we were average? What would that require? A 57% increase in our annual appropriation, an additional $269 million recurring. $269 million additional. At a time when the state receipts are down 9.2%. And this is sustaining, this is not one time. And it would have to grow every year in order to keep up with our costs. There's another way of looking at the same problem, is what would it cost the state to buy us out of the path that we're on, right? It would cost us, it would cost the state the amount of reserves that we're going to blow through in the next couple of years. So that as we're preparing to get our universities to a sustaining operating model in 2 years, it would cost the state the amount of money we're going to burn through just to balance our budgets, plus the amount of money that we're going to save by reducing the size of our faculty and staff headcount. It's about $350 million over 2 years. That doesn't get no investment, no sustainability plans, doesn't keep up with increasing costs, salary costs, health and pension benefits. Just to stop the slide. So there's the price tag. And I will leave it to all of us to consider, from our various different pragmatic lenses. The likelihood of that outcome. Let's move forward to the next slide. So maintaining the current path that we're on, that's the path that's outlined in these sustainability plans. The sustainability plans were Initially, we're going to try to get all of our universities to a balanced operating budget in 5 years. The cost to the system was beyond what the system could afford, and this was before the pandemic. Those costs have only grown. So the net result of the sustainability plan, so we went back to the well and we said, we're going to do more, we're going to do more, we're going to do different, we're going to move more quickly. And we emphasized a variety of ways, shared programs, sharing staff, and then as the pandemic hit, we realized we're really going to have to take on, the biggest issue that we've just not addressed, which is that our enrollments have declined way more quickly than our staffing and our employee headcount. That we have lost 27% of enrollments if you take Westchester out of the picture, and 8 or 9 or 10% in our employee base. And of course, salary and pension and health costs, salary and benefit costs make up 74% of our total operating. So we set ourselves a path, we're going to get through this in 2 years. Great plans, a lot of work done collaboratively on the campuses, really tough decisions identified in each of these plans. Here's the net result. The 9 universities, which are required to produce plans because they're financially challenged, will blow through $90 million in their unrestricted net assets, their reserves. 1 university will be left with a $23 million cash gap, require some loan or additional appropriation. And if you look at all the universities, all of them together will blow through about 1/3 of our total unrestricted reserves, $263 million. A lot of money. So we can maintain that path. On paper, it gets us to a balanced budget operation, but it has a number of challenges, which are outlined on the next slide. And I think
There's a question from
go on, please.
Smith.
Dan, on this particular choice, I guess you'd say, it seems to me that those plans, while they might be very well put together, they're not easy to execute for each individual school. And maybe with a couple of exceptions, it's like a couple of schools will be able to meet their plan without, an extensive amount of work. But for a few of the schools on the other end of the spectrum, let's say, I suspect they're going to have a tough time actually fulfilling and executing that plan. I'd like you to speak to that a little bit, just because we don't have any wiggle room here with whatever way we go. But I think in terms of this particular maintaining the current path option, I think we need to kind of assess the likelihood of each school executing their plan within at least even if it's a 95% execution, that's still not a balanced budget. So if you'd address that, please, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Actually, if you go to the next slide, I'll work my way through it from the bottom up. I mean, this requires those plans, and we can come back to this just to fulfill the thought, and it just makes the point I made before, is the way we get there ultimately is by just taking on the fact that we've got to align our costs with our revenues. So go to the next slide, and I'll take Sam's point, if I can, Randy, and I'll just work from the bottom up. There is no margin for execution error, 0. To hit those numbers, everything has to go swimming. And these plans are built on an assumption that we will continue to build out our shared services, that'll go flawlessly, that we'll be able to implement shared courses and shared academic programs, that students from one campus will be able to take programs that are available at others, that all of that will work flawlessly, and that will reduce our operating costs. They're built on, assumptions about enrollments, which seem to me to be realistic, but they don't take into account the potential impacts of the pandemic. They don't take into account, the fact that, we're looking at, double-digit unemployment in the state of Pennsylvania, and people are going to be potentially increasingly sensitive to price. So very limited room for maneuver. There are other risks involved in pursuing this approach. If you look at in most universities, the enrollment projections over the next few years, the plans go to 2022, are still trending behind the demographic of their regions. They're still losing market share. The draw on reserves we've already spoken to. We would have 4 universities with less than 10 million in reserves, 5 with less than 20, 2 years in advance of a 9 or 10% decline in a further decline in the size of the high school levy. That is seed corn. That is strategic investment money. That is not, we're talking weeks of operation, not months. And as I said before, none of these plans take into account any further exogenous financial shock of the COVID pandemic. To remind folks, the move to remote instruction in March for half a semester and 2 summer sessions cost the system as a whole $92 million. Any move to remote instruction, whether intentionally before opening in fall or during the term as a result of resurgence, is going to incur the same level of cost. And yes, we have been, and federal and state governments have been generous in stimulus funding, but that stimulus funding has not come close to covering the gap. I think one of the biggest challenges we face is, in order to address this kind of challenge, by addressing our alignment of expenditure and revenues, universities are going to be forced to curtail the breadth of their academic program. And that unraveling effect shows a real potential, right? At what point can a university no longer offer the breadth of academic programming it needs to sustain the enrollments it needs to sustain in order to operate with a balanced budget? So those are the risks entailed in following the current plan. Number 5, and again, probably one of the most difficult conversations that I think any of us have ever had. And this is where we're going to make a recommendation, is that, we're going to have to pursue all the things we're pursuing now: shared services, greater student portability, adjusting our revenues and expenditures so they're aligned to our new enrollments, and layer on even more, looking seriously at integrating selected of our universities. So talk about integration. I want to do it in the context of integration means different things. So I want to do it in the context of kind of spectrum of approach. If you start on the left of the screen, you can imagine fully independent, freestanding institutions. Any collection of privates would qualify as an example. State-related institutions receive some public funding, and while they're freestanding, you could argue that because they operate with public support, there's a level of collaboration, there's a level of kind of a coordination, governance implied through their receipt of funds from the state. You could think about the Pennsylvania state system, where we were before system redesign, largely independent institutions, some shared services, legal, labor relations, payroll. Very limited student portability. Some, students from one campus were known to be taking a few courses at other campuses. A few shared academic programs and courses, not many. Relatively weak accountability. You could move along a little further. So there's a higher level of collaboration. You could move along a little further, and the kind of the thrust of system redesign has been robust shared services, a more extensive rate, focusing, more intensively in a broader range of areas. But also encouraging universities to share faculty and staff positions. A higher degree of student portability. When I mean student portability, it's students enrolled at one university taking courses or programs at another, not students leaving a university and going to another. That happens too. A much closer focus on system-wide academic program planning. Right now, universities plan the program in a way that they believe they need to keep that virtuous circle going. Right, and the threat of doing that, of course, is that we're all competing in the same markets for the same students, and that has a cannibalizing effect. So we've been working over the last year and a half to figure out, or a year, to help figure out what does it mean to think about our academic program footprint as a collective. What does the state need? Where ought it be done? How? And obviously stronger accountability, including accountability for managing universities effectively with respect to their finances. So what we're saying is we're going to have to do all of that, including implement the sustainability plans. But we're also going to recommend that we look at integrating universities, focusing not wholly, but largely on those that arguably are under the greatest threat of experiencing that on the edge of that vicious cycle. And just to fill out the slide, you can imagine the sort of single accredited institution with a lot of branch campuses. We're not talking about that. We're just not. We're talking about doing system redesign as planned, all the things, including the version 2 accountability, implementing the version 2 accountability plans, and looking at a number of universities selectively to see whether through their integration we can continue to pursue our academic mission, expanding opportunities for all of Pennsylvania, doing it in a way that's both affordable for our students and sustainable for ourselves. Before drawing a pause, let me just remind myself on what's on the next slide because I can't remember and I can't see it. So Randy, if you could go forward one slide. Yeah, let me go through the next couple, setting up what we mean by integration, and then I'm going to pause. And then I'll move into the recommendations. So if we were to pursue university integrations, what would the goals be? Well, it's already touched on a few, but I want to be clear because the goals are going to begin to sort of go in this direction to stack up as criteria by which we would begin to evaluate plans and ideas. And the first one is that we need to maintain or expand high quality educational opportunities for students across Pennsylvania. It's our mission. It's not just any student, it's a particular kind of student. The sort of low and middle income students that we were born to serve. Those who are not served elsewhere, the underserved. It is clear that and not only is it virtually impossible financially, practical, or socially or economically desirable for us to close universities, and closure is obviously not in our purview as a board. It's clear that the economics of the situation really, as well as the sort of social and other imperatives, really force us to think about how do we sustain viable, effective, quality instructional activity at every single one of our universities, right? And to do that, think about how we honor and engage the local identity and the key stakeholders at universities in this process, but also going forward, right? The objective is not to close universities. The objective is to sustain viable, instructional, affordable, quality activity, instructional activity. And so that local identity is a huge strength. These universities have a lot of history. The youngest is 120 plus years old. There's other things we need to make sure we're able to do. Are we able to meet regional economic and workforce development needs? Are we able through integrations to position our universities to grow? We cannot cut our way out of this situation. Continuing to cut and reduce accelerates the pace of that unraveling. We have to find a way to grow, to expand the service we offer to current students, the market that we currently serve, very crowded, very challenging, or to look at students who are currently underserved, right? Yes, we have to realize cost savings, but as I said, this is not about efficiency. This is about our educational mission. And we need to make sure that we utilize the talented faculty and staff that we have across our universities. So those would be our goals. Let me talk a little bit about criteria. How would you choose two or the pairs or trios or triplet, whatever, the combinations of universities? What would the criteria for choice be? Well, potential to serve more students, growth into new areas. Absolutely critical. Regional proximity. It is important for us to maintain, it is a goal for us to maintain viable instructional activity at each of our universities. So regional proximity enables that to happen better than a pairing which brings universities together from across the state. And obviously the opportunities for cost saving and program alignment. So as we look at, okay, well, where should we begin this exploration? What universities should we be looking at? Those would be the criteria, and those are the criteria that we've thought of to date. So I'm going to go to the next slide and talk about the process for pursuing university integrations. And I think I can pause for a moment. So that process is now defined in Act 50, the result of the legislative agenda that we've been pursuing for well over a year. So what we've done here in this slide is to basically take the process as prescribed in statute and map it onto a calendar, which probably is the most reasonable and expeditious calendar that we could think of for this process. So the first step in the process is to conduct a review of the financial, stability. What would happen financially to the system and its universities if we were to integrate a selected number of universities? That's the first thing that we would do. That's required by statute. So right now, we have a good sense of what will happen to us if we pursue our version 2 sustainability plans. We have no idea what would happen if we actually did that while we're also looking at some integration. So that would be the first step in the process. We reckon we could get that done by October, bring it back to the board, depending on the board's reaction. The board would instruct the chancellor to say, okay, go develop an integration plan. What does integration mean? What does it look like? How are you going to do it, right? With what universities? Develop an integration plan for candidate institutions. And we reckon that's it's a 6-month journey. So imagine, plans potentially coming to the board in April with a midpoint check-in January. So let's assume that the board was okay with those plans. Under statute, it could give tentative approval, but no more than that. That would instigate a 60-day public comment period. So the soonest the board could approve a plan and ask the chancellor to go implement it would be in July of 2021. And the idea, if that happened, that you could imagine initial operation of an integrated entity in August 2022 with start of fall term 2022. It's also important to point out that the process described in statute not only has the phases of the integration approach, it also requires a high degree of transparency and consultation with routine touch points with usual stakeholders and the General Assembly. So, Randy, what's the next slide? Did I lose you, Randy? Did you lose me?
You're there.
Oh, there we go, thanks. I want to make the point finally that, while we talk about integrating universities and we'll be looking selectively at specific ones, this is not a journey which is about specific universities. It is about the system as a whole. Every university would have a role to play in our success. Obvious examples. We're pursuing shared services, shared contracts aggressively. They introduce savings because everybody participates. It's critical for us to drive down the operating costs of all of our universities, particularly those experiencing the greatest financial challenges. Non-participation in shared services is self-defeating. Similarly, with respect to academic programs, if an integrated group of universities wants to pursue, a program in the popular area of Celtic poetry, it may be necessary for other universities to step aside and let them, because their success, remember, their success financially is essential for all of our success going forward. And we're already seeing universities seeking out regional collaborations, universities that might be outside any that we're focusing on with respect to integration, already looking for sharing in various services and staffing roles in various academic programs. You can expect that to continue across the system, not just at the several. Randy, can you go to the next slide, because Madam Chair, do you want me to run through the recommendations and next steps, or do you want me to stop at the concept level and take questions? I'm open to your guidance.
I think it's probably a good idea to see if there are any questions at this point. There's been a lot of material. So if you use the raise hand function, please.
And I will monitor that. Tom Muller, you got a question. You might be on mute, Tom.
Yes, I was on mute, and it does take me a couple minutes to figure my way through this. I just wanted to make a comment. Relates back to your fairly quick comment, Stan, on option number 2, which was to close selected universities, which is an issue we hear a lot. But we also hear another comment that I think ties in, and I just wanted to make a comment on it, and that is that if we were to close a problem university and you didn't show what the cost might be for each individual university, but we know they're extremely high. You mentioned that it's a high number. What we all have to realize is that that burden then falls on all the other universities. It doesn't go away. There's no magic fairy that comes in and picks up that cost. And I think that ties back to the comments we tend to hear off and on about why we give a little more funding to some universities than other universities. It's because we really do have to keep them all going, all surviving in some way or other, or there's a tremendous burden on the rest of the system. And I just wanted to make that comment, which I think reinforces some of what you've been saying. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Anything else? I'm
There are
looking.
no other hands raised right now.
All right, Dan, let's continue. Thank you.
All right, so recommendations. There's 5 options and a review, each of them spending more time, obviously, on the version 2 sustainability plans and integration. So let me make this recommendation to the board. And again, I'm reflecting a recommendation that I have worked with my colleagues in the executive leadership group to present to you. I'm going to walk through it. I think it's a 7-part recommendation. So recommendation number 1, I'm recommending that the board initiate the process that is outlined in Act 50 by instructing me to conduct a financial stability review, focusing on 3 combinations of potential university integrations. When you're doing a financial sustainability review, you have to frame it somehow, create some parameters. Remember that spectrum of possible forms of collaboration. They all have very different financial models underneath them, so got to start somewhere. So we're going to recommend that for the purposes of this review, we assume that each integration entails the following: that an integrated entity emerges with a single leadership team, a single faculty and staff, a single academic program array, a unified enrollment management strategy, a single budget, and a single reporting relationship through the chancellor to the board. A couple of other caveats or recommendations: that we need to be open to the possibility that our analysis will lead us in directions that we can't possibly perceive. We need to allow ourselves to be driven by the data and the consultation and the fact finding to end in a different place than we started. That we may find ourselves looking at different groups of universities and potentially different models of integration, and that we need to be open to that. The process, as I understand it, is defined in Act 50, is engaged not to make a case for a predetermined direction, but to enable us collectively to determine what the direction ought to be in the interest of the goals specified before. So next slide, Randy, number 4. I'm going to recommend that we focus on 3 university combinations, each of which satisfies the criteria set out previously. I'll talk a little bit about each. So California and Clarion, there's an opportunity in all of these, obviously. Again, I've sort of said this as, the idea, the opportunity is to continue viable instructional activity in very traditional way at both universities. There are opportunities available to us to do that in a way which maintains local brand identity, et cetera. But with Clarion and California, we perceive an opportunity to combine their collective capability in online learning to stand up a low-cost, high-quality, fully online undergraduate degree and degree completion programming that is not currently available in state. Every year, 50,000 Pennsylvanians go to an out-of-state online provider. We believe we have an opportunity, and we saw that through the analysis that we did with Ernst & Young about a year ago, that we have an opportunity in that market. I'm going to go to Lock Haven and Mansfield, similar to Cal and Clarion, except that the growth opportunity for Lock Haven and Mansfield is in being more directly, agilely responsive to the demand, significant demand in the region for non-degree credentials. There's a considerable need amongst employers for what we would term as short course credentials that meet employer needs directly. And that there's already a lot of energy and enthusiasm in that part of the world and capability, some existing capability at Lock Haven and Mansfield to pursue it. Edinburgh and Slippery Rock, again, same basic set of principles. And there, the sort of operating hypothesis, the value proposition, is that the scale of the combined operation enables those two universities to be more effective in the market in which they're operating in that part. So that's a starting point for our review. One more slide, I think, on the set of recommendations. What's included in the review is set out in the statute. Those are the kinds of things we would need to look at that you'd expect to see us address in any report that we brought back to the board, including, I'll just emphasize the last bullet, the period during which the chancellor is instructed to conduct an economic review would also be one in which we developed an appropriate collaborative consultation process for the subsequent phase, which wouldn't begin until October, which is actually developing a plan. Right? The first thing is all about what do the finances look like. The second thing is, okay, what's the plan? So we would really need to have a collaborative structure in place in order to pursue. 6th and 7th, or 6th is house cleaning. There's a whole bunch of other stuff we would need to do. It's not clear we have the policy or procedures and standards to execute integration should we wish to pursue it. So we need to pay attention there. I'm specifically recommending that we evaluate our appropriations formula. I don't expect we're going to get that done by October. But whatever direction the board takes, whichever one of the 5 options we pursue, I can assure you the appropriations formula that we use was not designed with it in mind. And even if by opening up the appropriations allocation formula, scrutinizing it under the circumstances, with the knowledge of the direction we're headed, and deciding that we're not going to change it, we owe ourselves the opportunity to make sure that the assumptions we're using in allocated state dollars are the assumptions we need to be using to meet the circumstances that the system faces today. And finally, and I said this before, this is not just about integration. This is the next step in system redesign. So we've got to continue along the path that we're on, implementing our version 2 sustainability plans across our universities, continuing to develop our shared services, continuing to get our arms around our IT, continuing to do the kind of system-wide approach to academic planning, continuing to build the infrastructure necessary to enable students at one university to take advantage of academic programs and courses at another. We have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. So those are the recommendations. Randy, can you remind me what the next slide is? And I think I can stop. Yeah, you want to go back and then we can stop. And Madam Chair, let me leave it there and obviously entertain questions, issues, et cetera.
There's a question from Alex.
Looking at Clarion and Cal U, I had 2 questions actually. What will we do with the physical plant of those universities? If they were to go online, what do we do with the universities themselves?
Yeah, so a couple things. Randy, if you go forward 1 slide. So Alex, you're going to be frustrated by this answer, so I'm going to call that out up front. So we're on a journey to answer that question. The answer is we don't know. The journey is defined in Act 50 is, let's figure out from the start, is the juice potentially worth the squeeze? Because if it's not, this is hard. Let's not do this just because we're bored. Let's do it because we believe it actually enables us to continue to pursue our historic mission, right, across all of Pennsylvania. And I think we're going to need, if we're going to be genuine to ourselves and our values, we're going to have to honor a process which has built into it a period of protracted ambiguity, uncertainty, right? And set ourselves the task of answering these questions. But I can do a little bit better than Because as I indicated before, and it shows up in the numbers already, even though we haven't done the review, we have to maintain viable, more traditional activity at these institutions because of the investment in the capital plan, but also forget that because of the students who want to go there and who need to go there. And there's evidence in rural America, including our part of rural America, that students who are unable to attend their regional universities aren't just getting in the car or on a plane. They don't go to college. And remember that 47 and 60% gap. We need those students to go to college, not just to go, they have to complete their degrees. They have to obtain a credential. This is about the future of the Commonwealth. The public goods aspect here is just profoundly important. So, so in effect, that aspect is true, would have to be true, I imagine. And again, I don't want to preempt, the analysis, but I can't see a way that we can meet our student demand, serve our public purpose in a sustainable way without making even better use of the facility, if that makes sense.
And my second question is looking at public higher education in Western Pennsylvania. Moving those two schools online would leave IUP, Edinburgh, and Slippery Rock. And one of your recommendations was then to do a joint academic program between Edinburgh and Slippery Rock. Yeah. What does that look like? Do we see students then moving between IUP or the Slippery Rock, Edinburgh joint academic program? Are we going to get faculty moved from different schools to kind of fill those needs? What?
Yeah. So let me go up to the goals slide, Randy. No, back down. Sorry. While you're fine, there we go. For now, we really have to. We have to make sure we get these goals right. What are we trying to do here? This is what we're trying to do. I don't know how. I mean, I've been in higher education forever. I can offer you all sorts of opinions. Some of them might actually be evidence-based. Doesn't matter. This is a collective journey. This is a process which has to engage students and faculty and alumni and councils of trustees and staff and local members of the community and businesses and the General Assembly and the board. And this is and it needs to. The stakes are that high. And the challenge that we face, frankly, is that the stakes are that high and time is not our friend. So we're going to have to figure out how to work effectively together in a consultative, transparent way with pace. Yeah.
And I'm glad you said that. I have just one more comment to make, because for me, being at the board level and then being involved at IUP and having to understanding the decisions made at the highest level and then how people work it out, I think it's important if we're going to move forward with this, that we do work with faculty, with staff, with students, making sure that they're included in developing the plans for integration, because there are a lot of minutia, the details that we, I think, can tend to miss at this level. That really needs to be included in this process. And from what you're saying, I see that that's what it's going to be.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a great point. I don't know, Dale, if I know you're on this point about everything going online. I really want to be careful to not jump to that assumption. I don't know, Dale, if you wanted to address that, maybe.
Yeah, Jerry and I have been talking about this for several months, but certainly for the last few weeks as the integration ideas have come to more of a gel state. We have been online and delivering hybrid and distance delivery for many years to reach rural Americans, particularly of the Commonwealth. So this is something we do very well. Our faculty move back and forth between digital teaching and face-to-face instruction and just about everything in between. At Clarion University, we have no intention, and I think Jerry, I don't want to speak for you, but we've also talked about this, of eliminating our traditional delivery. We think that's an important part of our mission. Our buildings will remain intact. Of course, some of the older ones will probably come down eventually, but we want to have that physical presence to meet the needs of our students who want to come to the campus, who cannot have these experiences in a virtual environment, and expand our portfolio to meet the needs of the adult learners who want to go back and upskill and really move ahead with their economic development and enhance their communities. So it's not one or the other. It's not going totally online. And actually we're excited about it because we think we'll be able to work and serve the entire PASHE system by putting in place some more aggressive programs online so that that can serve even more citizens. Right now, we know by the research that those citizens are going to other providers who are very expensive or not as high quality or both. So we want to make sure we are able to give that to Pennsylvanians. So I appreciate your questions, Alex. I just wanted to make sure that you understood. We're not going totally online.
I'm glad for the clarification.
And I just want to jump in that, you know, from my point of view, I'm just going to reiterate what Dan said. This first stage between now and October is about financial review, you know, of the framework. So I anticipate that there will be questions about, well, what about this? What about that? How will this work? How will that work? And again, sort of, you know, going back to both this, which is the process piece of it, the role of the Board of Governors is every step of the way to oversee and make sure that not only are the milestones as defined by the process being followed, but, you know, Randy, if you go back to that goals, that is always upwardmost in mind. Right? I mean, is this what is happening as this unfolds? And that's our job, to keep asking that question over and over and over again. Not that Dan and his team won't, not that the presidents won't, not that, you know, that won't happen at every level. But there's all sorts of, you know, governance and oversight built into just the conception of the process, a lot of which has been defined by Act 50 itself. You know, so it's both impossible to, I think, to go too fast and in other words, leave out answering all of those concrete questions that will come up during the phasing of this, while proceeding with all due haste, you know, if I might. We have to do both things at the same time. It's the job of the Board of Governors to ensure that happens.
Neil and Jerry.
Yeah, so this is Neil Weaver. Just a few things and kind of to echo something that Alex said, is this is a really condensed time frame. And I am very aware of why we need that and the need for this. I guess my concern is this is a lot of information to be gathering, whether it's the data on financials or whatever it is. And if you're guaranteeing us, which I'm not sure, you know, quite, this is kind of where my question's going. How are we going to be talking to the trustees, to the local officials, to the economic development folks, to the students? I'm getting text messages right now from staff that are asking what this means. So I understand this is, you needed to get, you know, us on board to talk about this and moving forward. But I am very concerned about this time frame and the communication, quite frankly, with us as far as trustees, the staff, so I'll just leave it at that. But I just wondered if Dan or Cynthia, if you want to answer that, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah. So in terms of engagement, that is the engagement strategy, if I can talk about it that way, is something we need to work out this summer, you know, between now and October, and that is part of the initial process. And obviously work closely with you, Neil, and obviously many others to you know, to figure out what that engagement strategy looks like, not just with trustees, but elected officials, faculty. I mean, fortunately with our internal constituencies, we have pretty good structures. We'll have better structures when, we finish the work of the Shared Governance Committee, which is great. We're going to have to establish structures we don't have in other communities, alumni and others where we have limited reach because, just never have had to have that. So I think that's our next burden. And I think our next discussion in October, and always opportunities for a midpoint check-in, is to present that engagement plan and to work with all of you and many others in order to develop it. The timing, I just want a word about the timing. So obviously we're not working in a vacuum. I have, as to all my colleagues, have access to, very thoughtful people who are thought leaders and in higher education on the national stage and who have deep experience of these kinds of things. And so we obviously engaged in a direct dialogue with many. Not just here with sense of the Pennsylvania state system, but in the course of my last life. So it's not a wholly new topic. And there is, there's a lot of variety of approach and there's a lot of variety of models, but people are pretty consistent in terms of, the timing. The two pieces of advice I get most, consistently is don't do this too quickly and don't take too long. And there's reason. And if you look at experiences across the country, even in public systems, and there are actually now quite a few, the time frame that we're operating under is probably about average, maybe a little longer.
Jerry.
And I was just going to echo what Dell said. Dell and I, we are working together and this will strengthen both of our institutions. Because California, we've been offering online programs for more than 10 years. So there are opportunities not only for our two institutions, but for the system as well, because it will allow us to offer programs and grow and reach a population that we currently aren't serving. And so we see this as something that will benefit not only the two institutions, but the system as well. And we've got a strong presence and we have very robust programs already that we're going to strengthen.
And I just want to add, Jerry, building on that point, that's sort of a template for I believe how this will evolve, because these proposed combinations at this conceptual framework level really are building on strengths in terms of what's already going on. I believe being derived from the universities themselves. This is nothing that's being imposed in a hierarchical structure by either, the chancellor or the board. It's really building. It's really building from the universities up, as exemplified by what you and what Dale have just talked about in terms of Clarion and Cal.
David Mazur.
I just wanted to take a moment to thank the Chancellor and the whole team that put this together. Clearly, there's a lot that went into this. I believe I'm the longest serving member of this board, coming up on, it'll be 8 years in October. And this is something that, we've looked at for a long time that is not easy, but is truly necessary. And, the numbers show it. I mean, there's really no other path that would lead us to sustainability. And so I appreciate what you're doing. And I know it's not going to be easy for any of the constituencies, but we look forward to doing the hard work necessary to come out on the other side. So thank you.
Jan Yeomans, then Sam Smith.
Thank you. I just really want to echo some of what's been said, which is thanks very, very much for giving us such a clear and thoughtful assessment of our realistic situation. I think that's the first step in being able to address it. And I really hope that we'll have the courage to go forward with this wholeheartedly, embrace it, and work as hard as we all possibly can together to try to maximize the probability of achieving our success. Thank you.
Sam Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. As we walk through this whole thing, I mean, there's a part of me that says that when we looked at the various options of which direction you could go, that you know, we really needed the most concrete starting point. And I guess where I see us at this point is, as much as it may kind of be disillusioning in a way, it's like a new starting point for the discussion with a more serious focus on on three sub options within that. And I think that no matter how we view the concerns, some of them that are raised, obviously, this will raise questions with people in all facets of these communities, but we have to start the discussion somewhere in a more serious way and boil it down. And I would offer some, I guess, understanding that as we walk through this process set forth in Act 50, I mean, it does allow for some deviation from the original idea. And if I'm wrong about that, I'd appreciate it, Dan, if you'd clarify that. But it seems to me that part of the extended planning and public comment period set forth in Act 50 says that we have some ability to tweak this. So let's put it this way: nothing's set in stone, and that this is really the starting point. If we don't enter this discussion in a meaningful and sincere way, that we're back to one of the other options, which is a slow death, in my opinion. So I think it's as good a starting point as we could ever hope to have, and feel that it's the right direction to go.
Thanks, Sam.
There are no other hands raised right now.
Okay, I did have another thought that I want to actually put to Dan, which is that understanding that East Stroudsburg already has a presidential search underway, I'm wondering if it might make sense, as we consider a motion to affirm this next step in system redesign and endorse these recommendations. And I'm not suggesting this be part of the motion. I'm just putting it out here as a thought. That we might not want to be engaging in other new presidential searches, that might be not started, but potentially on the horizon. Dan, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think I'm right in saying that the board is likely to need a off-cycle meeting in August. Is that because there's a number of policies that we need to address ourselves to, and it's not it has to do with the Amherst relations policy and a handful of other things that need board action in a timely manner. So if you're okay with it, I think it would be there's a number of things that we would probably need to do with respect to presidential search. So if you're okay with it, I'm comfortable, I think it'd be prudent to suspend further beyond ESU, because ESU has already been launched. So Marsha, get on your text right now and tell Pat. It's all good.
All fine.
Well, actually, I don't care about, I do care about Pat. I love Pat. I care about Ken Long. So, but it's probably prudent to press pause on that for now going forward. We'll move forward in August for that off-cycle meeting with some policy options, some options, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. All right, so at this point, may I have a motion that the board affirms the next step in system redesign and endorses the 7 recommendations as presented by the chancellor?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
I think that I'm actually gonna call for any opposed. Are there any opposed?
You'd ask for discussion first and then.
I do ask for discussion. You're right. In spite of the fact we had discussion, I am now calling for discussion after the motion has been presented and seconded. Is there any discussion?
There are no hands raised.
Okay. Well, I will ask then. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed?
And we'll just pause to let people come off mute if need be. All right, no hands raised and no signals sent.
Okay, thank you very much. The motion carries. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to thank everybody and thank the Chancellor and his team. I will say that for really an unbelievable presentation, so thorough and so comprehensive and very compelling. I thank the board again, as always, for your support. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to say anything more. I want to move on to item 9B, which is approval of the appropriations allocation. And let me call on Sharon to make that presentation.
Thank you. And I'd like to just start with thanking the members of the General Assembly who passed the appropriation for the system, one early and two in the full amount that we had in the 1920 year. That allowed, I think, for the universities in the midst of the pandemic and COVID to give a lot of stability and relief for a very large unknown. And so I want to give you thanks for that. The motion is on page 22 and it was revised, so you should have received that this morning. For those new members for the board, and I'll talk to the slight revision in it. For those new members for the board, if you recall back in April of 2019, as part of system redesign, there was a motion to freeze each university's share of the appropriation while system redesign was going forward. During the past year, the redesign team looked at the appropriation formula as part of its work. Its focus was really on maintaining stability as we were going through all of the sustainability plan activities. And so that team recommended also to freeze the appropriation for the upcoming year at the proportional share for the universities. As the Chancellor spoke about, as we just, the new affirmation with the integration work will require us to take another look at that over the course of the next 12 months. But what is before you is freezing for the 2021 at the same levels as what was presented in 1920. And so if you turn to attachment 1, you will see the appropriation. It mirrors 1920 for 2021 for the university allocation components. I want to speak a little bit to the off the top. Office of the Chancellor, per the Act at our 0.5%, you will see a decrease in the internal audit and risk assessment dollars. That decrease is related to the change that was made to outsource the internal audit function. There are funds remaining that will allow us to continue forward with our internal audit work for the next fiscal year without requesting additional dollars. Faculty development is a new item for system off the top initiatives, and that's per the collective bargaining agreement. The Dixon University Center, you see the decrease associated with the changes and reduced expenses as we kind of ratchet back activities associated with COVID and less classes and events here at the DUC. The change that you saw from the prior distribution of the attachment to today is around the Chickadee Bay Field Station. We did the bond issuance. You approved the bond issuance back in January for us to move forward. We were expecting to do that in May. That got delayed until Tuesday of this week. So we redid the bonds. We did the bond issuance this week, and we did see significant savings for that. So that has gone down. So you see that decrease in savings for the bonds related to that. And then the system reserve, per the board policy, we have to replenish that to keep the 1.5 million. So that's the differential. The savings that we achieved through the internal risk assessment, through the DUC, the Chickadee Bay components, we are putting in a new line item for system for university integration work. As you all heard, there's a lot of work that's going to occur to go through the review and the planning, implementation planning activities. So we would look to take that 1.1 that we saved for those cost savings and put it to that work assisting those 3 groupings of universities that are integrated to have some additional external and internal support to help the initiatives. So that is the items before you. More detail in attachment 2 of each of the off the top, but I just wanted to give that high level overview.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sharon. And I want to obviously thank the legislature and the governor as well for keeping flat our allocation into this year. I now would like to know if there's a motion for the board to approve the allocation of funds from the system's fiscal year 2020-2021 educational and general appropriation as reflected in the board materials.
So moved.
Is there a second? I think I heard a second.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, any discussion? Randy, do you see any hands?
There is one question from Representative Brad Roy.
Okay, Representative Roy.
Okay, thank you. Am I doing it? Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, I don't see a video right now, so I'm not sure what's going on. Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Nice tie.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Okay, anyways, I think a year ago, we decided just to keep the funding the same as it was the year before. And then right now, I guess we'd be saying, okay, we'll just keep it the same again. If we did use the funding formula, what have those numbers been calculated? What would that look like if we use the actual funding formula, the funding formula that's normally used?
We did not go back to the calculations as the team work to rerun everything. That was part of the work of the budget team from System Redesign. They looked at all different kinds of options for a new formula, but they didn't go back because of the changes that were made, I believe, and this predates me, back in the 18-19 timeframe. But obviously, you know, there are universities that have, you know, lower enrollment where, you know, their per student appropriation is more than others. And so, you know, I think based on the need for stability, the team really was looking at that as the driving factor. And that was even pre-COVID, was that need for stability in the funding formula. Obviously, if we change the structure of the corporation and look at these integrations, it all has to be revisited, and that's the work that we're about to embark on. But if you want that, we could go back and rerun the old numbers.
Well, maybe, because I was looking at this stuff, and I get it that low enrolled universities don't have the economies of scale that large universities have. But when you crunch out the math, when you look at the number of students, you know, the head count, and you look at how much of the money, I mean, it ranges from about $3,300 of state funding per student at Westchester to about $22,000 per student at Cheney. And I get it that, you know, you can't just, you know, you have an average because some are higher, some are lower. You have an average. I get that, but the average is around, you know, $5,000 per student. And you know, you look at Mansfield, very small university, only under 2,000 students. They're getting about double per student of state funding compared to the average for the whole system. Cheney is getting about 4 times the average per student. And, you know, there's never going to be a situation where you could just take the money, divide it by the number of students, and everybody's exactly the same. I get that, but it just seems like it should be reined in a little bit where there's not such wild, you know, most of the universities hover right around, you know, $5,000, $6,000, you know, $7,000 per student. And there's some real outliers out there that really concern me. And then the large universities, I'm kind of concerned about that too. Like, again, when you run the math, Slippery Rock is getting around, $4,500 a year per student of state funding. Bloomsburg's about $4,400 a year. Kutztown's about $4,500 a year. But Indiana's almost $5,300 a year. And Indiana is the second largest university. And you would think that with economies of scale, they wouldn't need as much funding. I mean, nothing against Indiana, but it just kind of jumps off the paper when I'm looking at the numbers here. Bloomsburg's only a couple thousand students fewer than that. And when you do the math, like I said, Bloomsburg's getting, $800 a year less per student. And I just wonder if we should really renew this at the same levels as last year. I get it with predictability. I get it that it's hard to budget when you don't know how much you're getting, but I just wonder if I don't know. It just doesn't necessarily make sense how we're doing this.
Hey, Sharon, can I maybe weigh in here? Yeah, I mean, I think Governor Roy, you've actually just explained better than I could or did why whatever we do going forward, we're going to revisit the allocation formula. This is really, so I agree with you. We need to revisit the allocation formula. The question isn't about whether, it's about when. The budget committee, working with the presidents as they came up with the current formula, made the deliberate decision to not do it this year. And this is before the pandemic, because as we were moving into the sustainability process, predictability was important. And there was a number of approaches to predictability. We did multi-year tuition. We approved an allocation formula. We putatively hoped to have an allocation formula that would stay consistent for a couple of years. We introduced a common budgeting process. So there's a whole bunch of things we did to give universities a 2- and 3-year runway, thinking about their finances. Obviously, the pandemic sort of got in the way there, as it did with everything else. In some respects, it makes it even more important, especially this late, as we're already in the financial year, for universities to have some certainty about revenues. Thank goodness, and thank you and your colleagues for approving flat budgets, which in this time for 12 months, which is obviously very generous, and we're very grateful. That is hugely important, not just because of the funding flow, but because of the predictability, the visibility into what the year's funding will entail. We now know what our tuition is, and then understanding how the allocation will be distributed is also critically important. There's still a lot of unknowns around our enrollments, around our room and board receipts. So I would be reticent to introduce greater variability at this stage, but rest assured, part of the path that we're on is, as I said it before, will enable us to have a look at this allocation formula. And to a point that Alex raised, that is also going to require a lot of thinking about structure and process. And we haven't done that yet because there are a lot of different interests in funding formula discussion, and we're going to have to figure out how to balance them and to align around the principles that we're going to use and making the decisions we're going to make. So I guess this is my way of agreeing with you that we will be looking at this. I'm going to suggest that we do it in the course of the next, this current year. So the conversation we're having next year at this time is going to reflect on the review that we will have conducted.
Yeah, and I would just, in agreement with Dan and thinking about it from the point of view of the board, this has been something that we've been discussing actually for several years, and at each stage of redesign, we see that we got to go to the next stage of redesign, because all we're going to do is redo it all over again, right, as we get further along. The point of stability we're talking about right now, I think is also really critical, but there's no question that this is part and parcel, of where we're going, and obviously will become a key piece of the whole financial assessment. Right now, we do things at certain times of the year. We changed when we decide on tuition, which I think was a very smart move. To move it from July, from this would have been this board meeting to our April board meeting. That's going to be part of looking at this as well. As will Well, I suppose allocation will always have to be a separate motion, based on statute and everything, but it will be, it's got to be part of that larger consideration around finances, budgeting, and, how we're moving forward with integration, whatever that plan ends up being. But thank you very much for bringing that up. Is there any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed?
This is Brad Roy. I am opposed. I can't go along with this.
All right, that is certainly your right to do that, but that does mean I need to call for a roll call vote. Sharissa, if you could please do that.
Yes, of course. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. Representative Tim Briggs. Governor Audrey Bronson. Governor Nicole Dunlop.
Yes.
Governor Alexander Feefo.
Aye.
Governor Donald Hauser.
Yes.
Senator Scott Martin.
Yes.
Vice Chair David Mazer.
Yes.
Governor Mary Moskowitz. Governor Tom Mueller.
Yes.
Designee Noe Ortega.
Yes.
Representative Brad Roy.
No.
Senator Judith Schwank.
Yes.
Chair Shapiro.
Yes.
Vice Chair Sam Smith.
Yes.
Designee Allison Jones.
Yes.
Governor Stephen Washington.
Yes.
Governor Neil Weaver. Governor Weaver.
He had to step off.
Okay. Governor Janet Yeomans.
Yes.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum. I mean, we have a positive vote.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And glad we have a quorum too, still.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Now I am going to yield the floor again to Governor Don Hauser, who will moderate the next portion of the board meeting.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to moderate this portion of the meeting for the annual elections of officers of the Board of Governors. And as you know, our bylaws call for the annual election of officers at the third quarterly meeting of each calendar year, which is today. The term of office for each officer begins the moment they are elected and continues until his or her successor is chosen and assumes office. The officers of the Board of Governors include a chairperson and 2 vice chairpersons. In accordance with the provisions of Act 188, neither the governor, secretary of education, their designees, nor any member of the General Assembly may be elected to these offices. So to begin this process, I'd like to make the motion that the Board of Governors elect the following members to serve as officers for the 2020-2021 year. Cindy Shapiro as chair, David Mazer as vice chair, Sam Smith as second vice chair. And is there a second to that nomination?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Tom. Now, with that, are there any other motions from Board of Governors members for officers?
I see no hands raised.
Hearing none, is there any discussion on the motion for officers? Okay, hearing none, and Randy, I assume no hands
There are
raised.
no hands raised.
Okay, with that, a vote of the Board of Governors, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed?
There are no hands raised or any signals for opposed.
Wonderful. Cindy, David, Sam, congratulations on your election and your new term of office as officers. I yield the floor back, Madam Chair. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Don. I just want it noted, I said aye very, very quietly because I really meant it for Dave and for Sam, little, immodest to be voting for myself. But thank you very much. And thanks very much to the Board of Governors for continuing to have faith in us. Dave or Sam, would either of you like to say anything more?
Thank you. And I guess my only question is, I thought Sam was going to be first vice president and I was going to be second, seniority and all, but I'll take whatever title I'm given.
Sam, can you top that?
I can never top anything David Mazer does or says, and clearly don't want to get into competition about how you are dressed today. So.
Okay, very good. That's what we want from our leadership. Terrific. No, seriously, we appreciate the support. We pledge to do our best as we work with the Board of Governors and the Chancellor and his team and the presidents and all of the stakeholders in this next difficult but potentially very rewarding stage in our redesign. We have one final resolution to share. As you know, one of our students, Avon Bittinger, graduated this year and rotated off the board. So Avon, we are really glad you could join us here today so that we can honor you. And I will go ahead and read your resolution with the same vision for you as I have for the others whom we have honored today. Whereas Pennsylvania's state system of higher education, as part of its mission to ensure student success, includes on its Board of Governors 3 students appointed by the governor and approved by the Senate. And whereas Governor Avon Bittinger has served on the Board of Governors since 2019 and has graduated from Shippensburg University, having majored in political science with a complementing minor in history. And whereas Governor Bittinger has proven his leadership ability and care for others while at Shippensburg, serving as student body president, a resident assistant, a summer orientation leader, a 4-H programming assistant, along with participating in a long list of other clubs and activities. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Governors offers its gratitude for Governor Bittinger's involvement, contributions, and representation of a student point of view, which contributed to the state system's success during the past year, and wishes him all the best as he journeys into his career following graduation. And Avon, before I ask you to say a few words, I know that Dr. Carter would like to share some thoughts. Lori?
Thank you, Chair Shapiro. It has been said that the true test of leadership is how one responds in a crisis. Avon led the Shippensburg University Student Government Association and served on the Board of Governors during a historically challenging year. He did so with intelligence, creativity, and calm. We were fortunate to have him as a student leader. As a result, Avon's journey for professional life in public service is off to an excellent start. Avon, thank you for your leadership and your collaboration on behalf of Shippensburg University and the entire system. I look forward to having you back on campus to pursue your graduate studies.
Thank you so much, Lori, for those beautiful words. And Avon, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So I originally had a whole speech written, but given the sensitivity of time, I'll keep it short and very simple. I just wanted to say to everyone on the call, thank you all for this amazing year. I'm someone who values service, and seeing the dedication you all bring to this board, striving continuously every day to make sure students come first in our decision-making. It does not go unnoticed. On behalf of the class of 2020, I want to say thank you all for your extremely hard leadership, where every decision never seems like it's the right decision for everyone. And I look forward to continuing seeing the progress this board makes, as well as voicing my own opinion as a graduate student in the PASHE system in the coming few years. But I just want to say once again, thank you all for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. We really enjoyed having you, and again, wish you all the best. And by acclamation, I move that the board accepts all resolutions read today in honor of those who have served the state system. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Terrific. This, all the resolutions have been passed by acclamation. And thank you again, everyone. And I look forward to the time when we're all together and we can somehow celebrate all of you in person. New business. Is there any other business to come before the board?
I don't see any hands raised right now.
Okay, that's fine. Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned, but as a reminder to board members, we do have an executive session starting that we will start. Yeah, we're going to get, I'm sorry, it's
12:45.
12:45. Okay, so we're going to give you a little bit better than a 15-minute break. Feel free if you want to eat your lunch, you know, during that meeting, you're welcome to do so. But it's an important executive session. And so I ask that we come back after 15 minutes. Please stay on Zoom while everybody else logs off for board members to have executive session. And thank you all very much. The official meeting is adjourned.